Hey, everybody, welcome back to another amazing episode of the best darn show on the internet. And if you don't agree with us, you can not agree with us. We don't care. Anyway, it's our show. It's fine. We have we have a returning guest today, so I'm very excited. He's been on our show before and been on my show, the Brandon Bonanza Show. But before we get into that, I'm going to read today's quote, and then Sharon is going to pull a card. It's going to be amazing. Here it is. The quote: "Spirituality is not to be learned by flight from the world, or by running away from things, or by turning solidarity, and going apart from the world. Rather, we must learn in inner solitude whenever or with whomever we may be. We must learn to penetrate things and find God there." And that's by Meister Eckhart. Sharon?
That's a beautiful quote.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'm
our
pulling
friend
from
Joe sent it to us. He's been on the show before. He was on episode 33
and 25. I went to look.
and
I'm
25.
pretty sure it's 25 and 33.
Awesome.
The 10 of discs, pentacles.
Ooh, that's a pretty cool card. Can you shift it just a little, like to the right or left, like this wise? Yeah, there you go. Wow, I like that. You got the sun, got a house on the hill. Man, that looks like my dream house right there, as long as there's a river somewhere close. That's amazing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we got 8 sun rays.
Oh.
Oh no, 7 sun rays. I can't count.
No,
2,
I think it's 8.
6. Yeah, you're right. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Wait, no, maybe it's not. I don't know. I can't count. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's 8.
Oh, all right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, okay. We're learning our numbers here on the Oversharing Show, everybody. We're like Sesame Street. All right. So
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
ooh, I like that. That was good, Sharon. You never
That's
do
my
voice.
count. The count.
Oh, I like that.
Who loves to count?
How high can you count, though? That's the question.
I know.
No, the 10 of Pentacles.
Sounds a little high.
Yeah, I can count to at least
Just
6
kidding.
million, everybody.
This one goes to 11 million.
Sharon, you're out of control over there.
Just kidding.
I know.
What is wrong with me?
11 million.
Oh,
I like the 10 of Pentacles. It's a great card. Pentacles represents the physical realm, you know, how you support yourself, maybe your job, your family, stuff like that. And 10 is just, it's like the number of completion, I guess. And it's also starting the next cycle, right? Yeah, because 10's like the one. So I feel like that's what we're doing here on this show. You know, we did a lot of great streams recently. We had a live stream a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday. It was really cool. We talked all about division. It was really good stuff. So, but without any further ado, let me introduce our guest today, who is no stranger to anybody who watches this show. He just was on the Brandon Bonanza, like I said. He's also been on Oversharing with us. So welcome, Woodshop the Wise. What's going on?
Wise. I love it. Sounds very
Wise.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and I'm Brandoff the gray
or something.
the pink. I don't know. I should think of a fun brand off the purple.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Lord of the Rings is literally my theme in life, so it's entirely fitting, and I'm excited to be here. This has been my safe space recently, where I'm just getting caught up on your guys' streams,
Awesome.
and they've been wonderful. So,
The
thank you
picture
very much.
behind you. Yes, thank you. The picture behind you looks very Shire like, by the way.
every picture in my house is
It's
that.
very Shire.
Every picture in my house is the Shire without actually being in the Shire.
Is your door a hobbit hole door? That would be awesome.
Unfortunately, no, we rent, or else it would have been 8 years ago. No, I went through a shift probably 10, 12 years ago where I realized that there was a lot of stimuli in this world that is meant to create cortisol spikes and adrenaline spikes and stuff. So I just shifted everything about my life. I started listening to quiet, kind of like Shire music, you know. I'd put it on in my car. I'd go for a drive for 2 hours and put it on in my car. And I was like, this changes everything about the drive when you don't have like, you know, modern music with instruments and vocals and a song change every 3 minutes. So I did that. I that's kind of how we decorate our house, is calming stuff like that, and it's worth it.
I love it. It's like, even like I've heard that it's very healing to do things like that, to surround yourself with, even like looking at a beautiful landscape can change your perception and your mind. And yeah, it's just very healing, I've heard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
and
done
they've
that myself recently too. Well, in the past couple of years, I would listen to a lot of different, like either classical music. I got into like Gregorian chants. I got into the Shire music. Yeah, all that stuff is just
Okay,
so
you'll have to
amazing.
give me links to the Shire music because I want to know what you guys are talking about. But yeah.
if you just go on YouTube and type in Lord of the Rings music, like 10 hours or something, and there's
Oh
10-hour
wow.
loops of like the background soundtracks, just real kind of ambient Lord of the Rings style music.
Oh, okay.
So we'll put that on it. But they do have like Shire type music, which is kind of like that Celtic pub, like doing a jig type music.
Oh, okay, okay.
Our daughters call it or Hobbit music.
How
And they're 2 and
cute.
4, though. Mommy, put
Oh
on
my
the Hobbit
God.
music, and then they just dance.
That's so
And
cute.
but yeah, what you just said too about looking at landscapes and stuff, there's actual legitimate evidence that they've done studies on this before, where nowadays we never look far with our eyes. We always are up close, either with our phone or our laptop, for most of the day, right? Or driving, you're looking at the car in front of you, you're never having that far sight.
Yeah.
But they found that if you like climb up to the top of a hill, or you go to an ocean or something, and you just look for like
Mm,
10 or 15 minutes, it completely changes your brain waves and calms you down and activates your
amazing.
parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm like,
Wow.
when you're in a city, you can't do that, right? You literally can't look that far. You can't let
Mm-mm.
yourself just space off and look out into the distance, which is what we're supposed to do. So I kind of like try to supplement that by getting pictures like this, where it's like you're looking through a forest or something. Cause
Mm,
I don't know, man. I believe that it gets into your subconscious a little bit. Even if you
mhm,
walk by and glance at it and look at it for a second,
mhm,
I do it all day long. I'm like
mhm.
transported mentally into that for half a second, and it
I
calms me
love
down.
that. I love that. It's amazing.
I think looking at the sky at night is important too, or even during the day. Same thing though. Like I've been looking up a lot recently and just looking at the sky. And you can do that in a city. Like I went to go look at a car a couple months ago in New Haven, Connecticut, and I was down like in the city. And it wasn't, I was in like a little bit of a neighborhood, so it wasn't as bright. And I looked up and I was like, wow, the sky is amazing up here. So, and I've also heard that too. I think when it comes to writing or working or something, they were saying that you should always go take time to look outside and look far away. Like if you've been looking up close, you should always look far as you can. So I've always tried to practice that too.
I
Totally.
have to do that too, because I notice that if I'm like, when I take my walks in the neighborhood, um like I'll, like sometimes I'll be looking at my phone, right? Which is like, what's the point of walking outside when you're looking at your phone? I get it. But sometimes I'm like, I have to be on the phone for whatever reason. Like, but anyway, I notice that when I do, and then I look up and I look at a distance, I like lose my distance vision for like a little bit. And I'm like, shoot, I need to refocus. And so I look in the distance and I practice like doing, I try to practice doing like short and then long distance, looking at something close and then looking at something far, and practicing that the change, so that your eyes can uh refocus more quickly. I haven't been good at it, but like I do know that I need to do it more.
They tell you that that's what you need to do too. Like if you have a desk job where you're looking at a computer, they say look up every 30 minutes and just let your eyes refocus. Nobody does that. Or they might do it at work, but then they come home and they're on their phone for 4 hours straight. And it's like,
Mm,
it's killing your long distance vision.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, 100%. I actually learned a lot about this by going to seminars for like DJing and wedding DJs out in Vegas because they'd have all these classes and they would talk about people and they would talk about that specific things like that specifically, but their angle was marketing. So they would be like, the human, like I've heard about the human attention span shrinking to a goldfish like for years now, but they're always like looking at how you could, instead of kind of demonizing it. They're looking at how you can kind of like take advantage of it for your own marketing, by like different social media apps and stuff. So yeah, I've been on these ideas for quite some time, and I think that kind of falls into what we were planning on talking about with like the trauma and the stuff, because we talked about this on the live stream that we did, the Devil's Advocate, or Advocating for the Devil, or however I titled that, where they're just not, they don't realize what the internet is doing to them. Like, I guess I could say it that way, with the whole people behind like keyboards, and there's no like face-to-face interaction and stuff. And it slowly happened because, first we had telephones for a really long time, and then we had what was I going to say? Not the internet. Oh, like text messaging. Like the internet came along, and then text messaging came along, and then social media came along, and now we have whatever the hell we have now, where it's like a constant connection. And I feel like a lot of this is just due to the way that we're raised, and we just kind of get set up for it, so we just jump right in. So speaking of jumping right in, I guess we could just jump right in about like trauma and all the stuff we were thinking about talking about. So I know last time you were on our show, and every time we speak with you, we always talk about these ideas about like childhood trauma and all the things that we went through. And if you guys haven't checked out the episodes that we've done with them, we'll put them in the links. So go check them
Episode
out.
27 was the last time we had you on Woodshop. So
all right, cool. And there's a Brandon Bonanza episode where I labeled it Woodshop the Wise, because we were messing around with the pictures, and he sent me a picture of him with a wizard's hat. So I was like, oh, I'm going to make this Lord of the Rings. So yeah. So I inadvertently gave him a new nickname.
yeah.
Nickname. There you go. Nick.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just a caveat here, just a little warning. If you hear me like squeaking, I had one of the most intensely powerful laughs that I've had in probably 5 years last night. And I literally dislocated a rib. I have ribs that pop out really easily. Oh, I know. Yeah, this is something I go to the chiropractor at least like once a month with a rib out, because there's a spot in my thoracic spine where ribs just come out. And I was laughing so hard last night, and I felt it and kind of heard it, in the sense that, like if something pops in your body, it reverberates and you can hear it. And I heard it and felt it, and I don't even care, because that was like I was crying, like hysterically crying, couldn't breathe. And I haven't laughed like that in a long time, so it's worth it.
That's always fun. That's always good to have a good laugh.
Yeah, I have a big hot pack behind my back right now.
Oh,
so
okay.
If you hear any squeaking, that's what that is. But yeah, no, I'm excited to talk about trauma and stuff, because that's kind of been my road for, I mean, it's everybody's road forever, right? But it's been in the forefront of my mind for many years now. So I don't remember everything we talked about last time, but I've been on a kick recently. I would say probably the last year or so, which is kind of what sparked us to talk last time, because I wrote that letter about adrenaline addiction and how that plays into all of this. But especially more recently, I guess I'll share with you guys, the last 2 months I have not been feeling well at all. It's felt like it's hard to explain. It just started happening in the mornings and at nights when I was sitting or laying down and being still, like reading or something, or just on my phone. It would all of a sudden feel like a little tremor or like a little earthquake was happening. And I didn't know what it was. So after about a month and a half, I finally go to the doctor, and I'm not big on conventional doctors, but I'm like, this feels so strange that I might want to go get this checked out. So I go in, they take my blood pressure a couple times. This was about 2 weeks ago now. And my blood pressure read 147 over 99, which is like getting pretty close to you should go to the hospital levels. So they ordered me a Holter monitor to wear, a heart monitor for 2 days, ordered me blood tests, and the doctor's like, if you have any chest pain or any shortness of breath, get into an emergency room right away. So I left and I got home and had a legitimate panic attack, because I've had my, anxiety, you would call it, under check for many years now, but that one threw me for a loop. I was terrified. I was thinking I was about to have a heart attack. So I lay on the ground and I'm just like, I got my knees up because I've been listening to a lot of Tom Barnett, and he talks about resetting the parasympathetic nervous system by doing that, laying on the ground with your legs up on a couch or something, or up a wall or whatever, but decompressing that lower back, taking all the strain off of those low back muscles and psoas muscles and everything, and letting your body relax. So I've been doing that. So I went upstairs and went to do that and just try to calm down. And I couldn't. I was freaking out, full on panic attack. Just like uh, the most intense fear that I've had in a long time, because I was thinking about my kids. Like I could literally like have a heart attack at any second right now with what I just found out, and then they would grow up without their dad. And it's hard with young kids too, because my daughters are 2.5 and one of them is turning 4 in 4 days. So I go, they're not even past that 5-year-old level where the brain does a really big rewiring, right? So like if I were to die right now, they wouldn't even remember me. That's weird to think about as a parent, because you go, I feel like I've had them my whole life. My life started over when they were born. But then if I were to die right now, they wouldn't remember me. They might have like vague memories or like something if they were prompted with a picture or video or something, but those memories haven't formed in them yet. So it was just a mind fuck laying there on the ground, just like I was crying at one point because I was so anxious and so scared. And I was just praying like feverishly, like, okay, I'm done. Like, heal me or show me what I need to do to heal. Like, put it in my path, make it so like clear to me that I can't avoid it, right? Like, because I know that I people call me wise, and I'm like, yeah, I guess I have some wisdom, but I'm also still very, very retarded. So put it in a way where I can't miss it, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up calling my mom and telling her about it. And she's like, okay, well, calm down. I'll order you a blood pressure cuff and have it overnighted to your house. And I was like, if you want to do that, go for it. But I'm just freaking out right now. So she ends up doing that. I take my blood pressure the next morning, right? It's the same blood pressure. And I'm really freaking out. And then I take out the little insert in the package, and it says to take an accurate blood pressure reading, you need to be sitting stationary for 5 to 10 minutes beforehand so that your body can calm down. And your arm needs to be at the center of chest level. And it clicked for me in that moment. I had just like ran up 3 flights of stairs. Well, I guess it would be like 6 flights of stairs because they're back, they zigzag. It's like 6 flights of stairs to get up to my doctor's appointment. It was maybe a minute and a half before they called me back. And then they took my blood pressure with my arm hanging straight down. And so I'm like, I wonder. And I take my blood pressure at home with my arm hanging straight down. And it's like that. I prop it up on a pillow. Perfectly fine. My blood pressure's always been like 117 ish over like 75. Perfectly fine as it's supposed to be taken. So I
How
go,
do they know not to do that though? That makes
dude,
no sense.
Western medicine. Yep.
They're just not teaching people anymore or something.
Yeah. So I was very angry for about 10 minutes. I was like, how dare you? Because that was like a traumatic experience. And I don't use that word lightly. I mean, I was on the ground, like crying, thinking I was about to have a heart attack. And I had like, proof this time, and so I end up calming down, and then I go, whatever, it's going to happen for a reason. So then I end up connecting with a friend who calls me to check in because we're supposed to be working on a project together. And I had texted him and said, hey, man, like full stop. I got to reel everything back in and get my health in check because this is terrifying. So he called the next day to check on me. And he's like, yeah, man, if you need any advice or anything, my wife is a acupuncturist, like, Eastern medicine. And I'm like, oh, really? Because I'm super into acupuncture. I love acupuncture. I love all Eastern medicine. I've been studying it for 15 years. It's truth. And so she's like, send me your tongue, send me your tongue. I'll diagnose you, you know?
A picture of your tongue. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did that top and bottom. And then we end up texting for about an hour and a half, and she gives me all of this stuff and tells me, it's affecting all your organs, but it's a very severe blood deficiency and chi deficiency. So we need to build up the blood. The first thing we need to do is detox your liver, start drinking celery juice every morning, fresh juice. So I order a juicer. I've been doing that for about a week now. And then that evening, um, our mutual friend Patrick from the wonderful Pat Life podcast, he
Yeah.
called me because I've been supposed to be working with him for a while now. I signed up for his course on his website. He's wonderful at what he does. He has so much wisdom about the human body and like the spirals in the body and why things happen. But I didn't ever send my video in because I was just feeling so weird for a couple months. So he called me that same night. He's like, I know that you feel this way, man, but it's time. It's time to heal. Let's get doing this, basically. So
That's awesome.
that's the boost that I needed. So this is a long story, sorry.
No,
But
keep going.
in the theme of healing, it's like that's what I love about this life. And it's so beautiful because I come from a where I am right now, I guess you could consider like a Christian mindset, but I'm not involved in the dogma. I don't have any hard set theology or anything. I just have experienced enough in this life to know that God is real,
Yeah.
and where I am currently is that's good enough for me. I'm reading the Bible because I've never read it all the way through. I'm trying to learn as much as I can through actual real life things that I go through. And I prayed in earnest that night. And the next day, I have an acupuncturist fall into my lap who diagnoses me. I have, Patrick, who's a good friend who is wonderful at what he does, sending me stuff that I need to do to start healing my back and get things moving again. Um,
What
so
a
yeah,
wonderful answer to prayer.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And yeah, it's just beautiful. So like now I'm really on like this healing kick right now of like detoxifying, not just physically, but because like you can't do one and have it, it does affect the others, but you can't just focus on one. So I'm detoxing physically and mentally and
And
trying to deal with
spiritually, dare
like
I say.
100% and like emotionally trying to get repressed emotions to bubble up so that I can actually process and move on move on from them. And I'm currently on a bare minimum 2 week social media detox. I'm like 3 days into it right now, but that's probably going to turn into a little bit longer because, like, all jokes aside, I'm only on day 3 and I already feel the effects of it. It's weird. I told my wife yesterday, I feel like I'm kind of coming out of a bad dream for like 17 years now since I really started using social media, where you go, I have all day. Like, I have all day long. I don't have to check anything on my phone, like I don't have to. And like people don't understand how much control those cortisol releases and then the dopamine releases, and then you get dependent on this stupid
Mm,
black screen on your phone for your
mm,
happiness.
mm.
And I'm the type of person who doesn't really wean off things. I go cold turkey. So I'm like, I'm out. I'm just out of all of it for a couple weeks. I'm going to reset those patterns as best I can. Try to reset my sleep, not having a screen in my face at midnight. Um, and yeah, I'm feeling wonderful. So
Excellent news. I'm so
Yeah, I think
glad to
that's
hear
really,
that.
yeah, me as well. I think it's really important to reset those patterns in your life. I talked about my relationship with cannabis and how on 420 I quit for an entire month, and now I just go with it, every once in a while or at night or whatever. And it's not like it's a judgment for anyone else, because a lot of people, when they hear you say something like that, I even know I was used to be the same way, or maybe sometimes I am, I'll get a little defensive, like, oh, well, what are you saying? I'm not good. And it's like, no, I'm just saying this is my experience. But it is good to reset from anything like that, any kind of normal thing.
Addiction.
addiction or just any cycle that you have in your life, something that you always do. It's always good to do something different, go a different way. Like in the Marine
Yeah.
Corps, they told us you should always go a different way home. You don't want to be an easy target. You should always try to
Yeah.
do things differently.
We
And
talked about that. Did we talk about that with Slick Dissident, Brandon?
yeah, yeah. And they wonder why I got mad when I tried to steal a plane to fly back to my place. I'm like, you told me to take a different way home. Just kidding. I didn't try to steal a plane, but yeah.
It's true though. You got to
This
make
is
changes
comedy,
like that.
folks.
Your guys' episode with Benjamin Balderson, I loved. I had him on a couple times when I was hosting Hanging with Bears, and the dude, I could listen to him talk for months straight and not get tired of it because it's not just like the wisdom that he has, but it's also his delivery. It's so easy to digest what he's saying, and you get so roped into it. But he was talking about diet a lot, and I mean, you have to expand that outwards too, not just with diet. He was talking about blood type diet and how some people are vegan and some people are this or that. And I tend to believe that as well. I'm type O negative, so I have that Rh negative. I have
Oh,
that
wow.
Nephilim blood in me.
Wow.
But I
Brandon and I are O's. I mean, I'm sure you heard that. So we're all O's at the
yeah,
very least.
no
Oh,
no coincidences. Um, but I have to eat meat. If I don't, I did when I was a maybe 19 or 20 years old, I was working at Greenpeace here in Portland, Oregon, and it was a cool thing to do to go vegetarian or vegan. So I'm vegetarian for probably like 8 months, and even still eating some protein sources like eggs. I looked like Skeletor. Like I was just huge dark bags under my eyes. I lost a little bit of weight, but not much. But I had no energy. I felt like I didn't lose fat. I lost muscle mass. Um, and I remember it like it was yesterday. One day, it was like this this revelation. Like God came down through the sunlight as I'm in downtown Portland right before lunch and like beamed it into my head like today you're getting meat, you need to eat some meat. So I went and got there are food carts down there. I got this huge, like size of my head, chicken burrito, and I,
Mm,
and I ate it, and I was like 20 minutes later it was like I was feeling my brain turn back on, like it
that's
was working
insane.
again. It was like I was in this weird foggy state for the better part of a year, and then all of a sudden it switched off, just getting some animal protein and a little bit of
Protein.
fat into
Wow.
my body. But
Crazy.
I think that the thing that Balderson was saying about, different people require different things is so key, because it's not just about food. He was going into, the proteins that bodies create and why some blood types can't, digest leafy greens because of the high oxalates and stuff. And 100%, I've had 2 kidney stones, and it's been when I've been eating a lot of greens and cruciferous vegetables.
Wow.
Even though I still eat organic and I'm eating really well, when I eat too many greens, I've had a couple kidney stones, and it's, you know, never again, hopefully, God willing, because that was the most pain I've ever experienced. But uh, that also happens with us everywhere else in life. It's not just our diet. So it's really important in any situation to realize that some people might, it's weird. People understand it with diet, but they can't seem to apply it elsewhere. Like if you have a certain disease, you might die if you eat too much salt, right? It's salt. It's something we all need, but if you eat too much of it, you might die. Or sugar, if you're diabetic, like these can cause actual life-threatening problems if you consume too much or too little of them. And that also applies everywhere else in life, but people don't give that credit. Like some people might go, oh, you're weak because you don't want to deal with confrontation. And it's like, maybe that person had an entire lifetime of confrontation up to that point, and it caused such severe trauma inside of them that they cannot deal with it. And it's not that they don't want to or that they're weak. It's just that, you know, confrontation or childhood trauma or adult trauma or any of these things changes us on a like biochemical level. It changes our hormones, it changes our stress hormones, it changes the actual gray matter in our brain, it changes everything about us, it creates who we are. So we walk around life, well, some people do, painting with a very broad brushstroke, saying that everybody should respond to certain stimuli a certain way, or else, you know, you're not worthy or you're not this or that. And it's like, no, there's just every single person is an individual.
No collective answer.
Never, never. And the thing that I see happening recently and also just in general, and I have taken part in it many times in the past as well, is when we come across new information that betters our life, be it a dietary change, like, you know, the textbook example is someone turns vegan and then they won't shut up about how everybody else needs to be vegan. And, you know, but this also can happen spiritually. It can happen in your religion. It can happen anywhere. When you come across something that is better for you, you immediately assume that it's going to be better for somebody else because it worked for you. And then the thing that most people do wrong is they start to punch down. And that is detrimental to your journey. It's detrimental to the person that you are punching down to. The analogy that I like to use is we are all on this 1,000-rung ladder, right, of ascension, trying to grow as human beings and grow spiritually, and grow in empathy and compassion and forgiveness and understanding and all these things. And what I see happening often, and again, I've done it in the past many times, is you'll be neck and neck with somebody, right, on two ladders. And then you might take a couple steps up, and then it's like a subconscious thing most of the time that happens, but you go, now I'm better. Now I'm better. So now I have to judge this person because they haven't caught up. So they turn around and start punching down, telling the other person, you know, how bad they are. And that, you know, when you do that, you're taking your hands off of the ladder. You're going to fall. And as the person on the receiving end, if you take your hands off of the ladder, whether to defend yourself or to try to punch back, you're also going to fall off the ladder. But that punching down is what starts a lot of conflicts. And it doesn't need to happen, but you have to understand that you're doing it before you can change it, which is why I don't judge people, because I did it many times. I call it, when I was doing it, it was mainly in my truther days. And I now call it like the truth or ego, where you find out something and then you go, you know, I've got the documents, so I'm better than everybody. I'm smarter than everybody. I've got it all figured out. And then there's like a subconscious judging that takes place. And we all saw that in mass over the last 3 years, right? Like if you had the veil lifted, be it before all of the nonsense started or during it, if you had that veil lifted of germ theory and you're on the terrain theory ticket, right? Then you, at some point, everybody, myself included, looked around and said, these people are all dumb. They're all stupid. They're all this, that, the other thing. But it's like they might just be a couple rungs down that ladder, and attacking doesn't do anything to help their journey or your own. Ironically, it stunts your own growth. So it's like, you know, 2 steps forwards, 1 step back, or 2 rungs up and 1 down if you choose to take that path and then try to attack people that haven't woken up at the same speed that you have.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know if, I can't remember if Jesus said it, but like leading by example is like the best way, because like you can't just like force something down somebody's throat and expect that they're going to be like you. That's zero humility on your part. Like no humility for me. When I see somebody with no humility, I'm just like, okay. I'll take what you say with a grain of salt. I mean, I take what everybody says with a grain of salt, but even more.
How dare you, Sharon?
I know.
I love what you said there, Nick, because when you do that, you're bringing both of yourselves down. I mean, the easy way to say it is, if you think we're here to just raise our consciousness, it's basically what you just said, but just quickly in a nutshell, right? It's all those things. you're not going up the ladder at that point. You're bringing somebody else down with you. And then it's a good, I mean, it could be a good experience for that person if they can realize it and work through it too. And then they can, but they're going to rise above you. So you're either going to knock them down or they're going to rise above you. So that's a good thing to think about, even for myself now, when I go to try to judge somebody and make judgments and even say something to them. I could say, am I going to knock myself down the ladder now? You know, am I going to, no, it's not a good idea.
Yeah. And it's something that you really have to be conscious about, because whether or not you want to call it demonic or jinn or bad energy or whatever, terminology you want to use for these things, it's often not in your face. Like, it is so quiet of a whisper when it starts out, and you go, I found out this new information. Great, I'm healthy now. And then, a couple months later, it might be, oh, but everybody else is dumb. Like, everybody else just isn't seeing it. That's your ego growing. Like, you're literally witnessing the ego taking over when you say, I'm better than other people because I found this. And then a couple months later, you could form some very serious resentment towards people who have always been on your side, have always helped you, have always been there for you, and who genuinely loved you, as a friend or family member or even a partner. You can start to like unconsciously develop resentment towards that person because you feel like you're outgrowing that person. And it's detrimental, and it causes a lot of things that we're seeing today. And it's, I've said in the past, because for many years I was like, I wish everybody would just wake up, right? Everybody in their truther phase goes through that. Like, why can't everybody just wake up? You really wake up when you realize that would be the most terrifying experience ever if everybody woke up all at once. And it would remove the purpose of this life, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Help other people. That's the beautiful thing about this life, is everybody's waking up at a different pace, at different levels. So there's a constant need to help people. And if you believe in God, that is why we're here. Like, we should be helping people, right? Like, selflessly, humble, walk quietly, help people, give people the shirt off your back. If you don't have an opportunity to do that because everybody has a fucking shirt, then your purpose is taken away. You don't have an opportunity to help others. So it's like, it would be like if you're walking in a desert with a group of people, or let's make it easier, 2 people, right? If you both start with the exact same energy level and you run out at the exact same time, you're both dead. If one of you has more energy than the other person, then when the first person tires, you're going to be able to keep going. So you're going to get them and drag them along, and you're going to motivate them, and you're going to pump them up. Hey, come on, we can still do this. Keep going. We got to keep walking. You're going to give them some strength. And then when you tire, that person now has an opportunity to help you. And it's this constant pulling each other forward in life that I think is crucial to your own personal development. But most people don't want to do that because of that childhood trauma. They want to say, fuck the world, fuck everybody else. I can do it all on my own. I don't need any of you. And they start looking at people as a commodity or a means to an end, instead of people that they could be helping as well. It's very deep psychology. It's taken me a long time to realize that it's happening, but now that I realize it, I can see it in real time as it's happening between people. I can call stuff out before it even happens in people. Yeah.
Very well
better
said.
than me now? No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry,
Sharon, go ahead.
Now that you know, do you think you're better? Yeah, I love what you were saying about if everybody woke up at the same time. And it reminds me of the memes that I've seen that's like, what I thought spiritual awakening might look like and what spiritual awakening really looks like, or like what spiritual awakening really looks like. And it's like a little kid screaming his brains out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That or that the video of the kid that's going through on that what do you call it when you like go through the woods on the rope?
Oh yeah.
What
The
do they call that? You know what I'm talking about?
yes,
Zip line.
Zip
zip
line,
lining.
that's it. There's like a kid zip lining and he's like, this is great. And then he's like, ah, and he's screaming, he's all scared. Then he's like, this is great again. Something I did want to add, especially because we're talking about memes really quick, it reminded me because what you said in the beginning about when people say, that you should have conflict or you should pick up this battle or fight this battle. I remember there was this meme that was like, you need to put back your battles. You have too many battles. And then the guy's like, is this good? And he's like, no, put back more battles. And he's like, nope, put more battles back. Like, let these things go. Because I think what people don't realize when they see somebody that might not be engaging in a battle right away, especially when they're a giant, uh, it doesn't mean that they're afraid. There's no fear there. And if there is, it might be a fear of what they'll do if they get riled up. I know I get that way too, because I can have a good temper on me. And sometimes I'll do things later that I regret. Like I've thrown things and broke things and done crazy things before. And then I'm like, oh, what the hell did I do that for? So I think that it would be good for people to realize that. I just wanted to say that if you see somebody who's not partaking in a battle, sometimes it's not fear, sometimes it's because they think that or they know that them contributing is just going to make it worse. Sometimes when you step back and you absorb it, you actually could absorb some of that negative energy and transmute it into something better. And you're keeping that example, especially when you're a big, tall guy. I tell people that a lot. I'm like, when I walk into places, sometimes I could change the whole mood of the place if I'm just like smiling and laughing and like, oh yeah, what's up? It's like everybody around me kind of maybe feels safer. It's like in nature when the birds are singing and everything's great, and then you hear the birds stop singing and everything gets quiet. You're like, is there a predator around? Going on? It's that same thing. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because it really, just like you were saying with the diet and all these other things, it's even a physical thing. Like some people love to work out all the time, and some people don't. Some people work out in different ways. Some people go to the gym. Some people swim. I walk in the woods a lot. There's just different ways. And I feel like if we are really so like strict on what other people in our lives are doing and they have to be like us, then we're kind of losing a lot of what this realm is all about, the beauty of diversity, but real diversity, which is just people doing they just have a different way to do things, just like bringing it down to diet. That's a great analogy. I mean, we probably have to start hammering that one, and that's really going to make me think too, because I do watch my diet, but I don't always watch everything else in my life. So maybe I could look at it through that lens and it'll help me. Thanks.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say was the point you were making about if everybody woke up at the same time and everybody like that's just not going to happen, right? That's just, I mean, I don't see it happening. I'm not saying I'm a prophet or or anything, but it's just because it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't bring purpose to our lives. And so there's no opportunity for growth. And then to me, that would mean this realm is over. It's done. We've we've finished. We accomplished. We came to the goal, whatever you want to call it. We finished our race all at the same time. That doesn't happen. That's just not a natural, normal thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I wanted to add to that. I love that because, like Nick said, when you first wake up, you're like, the world has to change. Everyone has to wake up. It's all them. And you're still not looking at yourself, right? I see this all the
Yeah.
time. Like, we're going to save the world. It's like, nah, man, the world's doing just fine. Like, that's what it's here for. It's kind of like saying, if you see a chainsaw going around and people keep grabbing a chainsaw, you're like, I'm gonna fucking make the chainsaw better. You're like, that was probably a terrible analogy, but it's like, no, that's the chainsaw supposed to be here. Like, it gives us, it's like the tension, the resistance that we need to work out. And we've talked about this before too. It's the same kind of thing. Instead of a physical workout, it's a spiritual workout. You could work on yourself. All the shitty things that happen to you, you could just say, all right, how can I handle this? And then I've noticed in my life, once I started not freaking out about it and taking it personally, a lot of those things go away. They don't even start to affect you anymore. So, yeah.
Could it
Yeah.
be that it's a mirroring effect when you're saying pointing at the world and saying everyone needs to change because I'm perfect. Okay.
It,
I figured it out. I'm better than you. And so
And
everyone else needs to change.
and really
more often
quickly,
than not, yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say because I've seen people before, and I probably used to do this too, where they think they know what's right for everybody, and the things that they're saying are what they should be doing. It's like they call it projection, but it's so crazy. I notice that now a lot with people that I interact with and talk to. I mean, even people you see online. You're like, you sure you're not talking to yourself, lady? Or fella? It's like, you sure that we got to change the world? Maybe you just gotta
Change
change
yourself.
yourself a little, not in a way that you're going to change and whatever. It's better yourself, raise your consciousness, all that kind of stuff, right? But
Acknowledge your inconsistencies, your traumas, your wounds.
yeah.
Take some time to heal.
Are you talking to
Like,
me, Sharon? How dare you? I've already threatened. I told Sharon in one of the episodes, I'm like, I'm going to kick you off. I'm going to be the over Brandon show. And then I'm like, but everyone's going to be over Brandon real quick. So I'm going to have to call Sharon back. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Funny. I like a lot of stuff that you both said. Brandon, your stuff, you talking about battles is you're dead on. One of my favorite quotes is from Sun Tzu, and it says, "The greatest victory is that which requires no battle." And it is very true. And it's like sometimes battles come to our doorstep, and we have to engage in them. But if you see somebody actively looking for battles, um, what I see in that is somebody who did not get a proper uh, induction into adulthood. I think that's something that's very lost in modern society, is we have no, there's still some tribes that do it right. Some tribes in Africa where it's like they'll send you out with a sharpened stick, and if you don't bring back a dead lion's head, then you're not allowed into the tribe. But if you do, then you're now a warrior, and you've proven yourself, and you're a man, and you get that respect and that admiration, and you get the trust. That's the most important thing, is like the trust that you will protect that tribe, protect your, not only your family, but everybody else in the tribe. We don't get that anymore. What's our rite of passage these days? A cell phone, keys to a used car.
terrible.
We're given freedom in at least in the United States, but in Western culture in general, they give you the freedom. You do nothing to earn it. There's no acknowledgement of why you're being given the freedom. There's no rite of passage. There's no test. There's no trial. There's no way for you to prove yourself. And this is especially pertinent for men, because it's something that has always happened with men in cultures for thousands of years and no longer happens. It's just, here's keys to a car, a cell phone, most parents, and go have fun, get the hell out of my house, go live your life. And then 2 years later, you're really kicked out the front door. And it's, here's college, or here's working, and you have to get your own apartment and stuff. So you get thrust into this world of just absolute chaos, right? Anybody who's watching this show knows that this world is designed chaos. I would say most of it is, at least the superficial stuff that humans create. I'm always able to spot the chaos in it that's meant to kind of hold you back from becoming better spiritually or ascending or whatever. So if you see someone constantly choosing battles, I always see somebody who feels like they have to prove something to somebody, but oftentimes they end up hurting a lot of people in the process over years or decades or an entire lifetime, when in reality they should have gone back to that first person that they feel they need to prove something to, and just hashed it out with them. I did that for a long time. I didn't even realize that I was doing it either. That's why I don't judge people. I just observe and I understand. But observing something doesn't mean that I have to accept it. And, I did that with my own dad for quite some time. I was very angry at him because of how my childhood went and him leaving. And I walked this earth for probably the better part of 15 years being somebody that I was not, because I was trying to show people that I was worthy of love and show people that I was worthy of attention. And it's like that was a deep wound in me that I didn't even know I had. And it was like, oh, I'm looking for my own father's acknowledgement that I'm a man, right? And because I didn't get it, he left when I was 12, so I didn't even get the superficial rites of passage, And he ended up calling me years ago. I don't even remember when it was now, probably 6, 7 years ago, and apologized in earnest for everything that happened when I was a child, and said, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of the man that you became. I should have been there for you. I wasn't. Um, and it's like, man, that wiped away 15 years worth of me putting on a show for everybody else and trying to be this. Because, at the same time, I know Brandon's a giant as well. We got that Nephilim blood. I'm 6'4". I'm 200. I sway between like 235, 250 pounds, depending on the season. I put on my winter coat. And, but I'm a menacing person in most situations. When you're 6'4", 6'5", it's not often that you find somebody taller than you. You're the tallest person in the room, which means that all the eyes are on you. And if all the eyes are on you and you have those deep-seated wounds, you're going to use that attention to try to prove yourself. And man, what I've learned over my short life so far is that no amount of posturing, no amount of trying to build yourself up in the eyes of other people is going to ever do anything to heal that wound. You have to go back to the source. You have to have those conversations with people that really hurt you badly in your childhood. And then from there, you'll realize that the person that you are, or the person that you were trying to be for however many years, is nothing more than a accumulation of defense mechanisms that you put in place since childhood to not have any more hurt come into your life. But the scary thing is when you put those walls up, I wrote this in a letter that I sent in probably months ago now. When you put those walls up, you think that you're blocking the hurt out, but all you're doing is locking it in with you. And it will torment you and rip you to pieces for the rest of your life until those walls come back down, because you're locking pain inside and you're putting walls up so that love cannot come in, or forgiveness.
Yeah. What your dad did for you. Wow. What humility it takes for someone to acknowledge all of that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And just one more thing. When he was talking to me on the phone that day, he didn't just apologize to me. He apologized for not being there for me or my brothers. He apologized, said, I don't remember exact words, but basically said, I should have been better for your mother. I should have been a better husband. So it was like a multi-layered healing for me, because it's not just addressing me, because then I also had anger and resentment for how he treated my mother, right? Walking out on her, putting her in that position with 4 children, having to work 60, 70 hours a week just to keep a roof over our head. So it's like I was able to tell that he had hit a point where he genuinely, wanted to apologize and felt bad about everything that he had done. So it's important, man. This is why I write so many letters about forgiveness and compassion and understanding that even though somebody might be, in your eyes, more of a fuck up than you're still a fuck up. Like, nobody's perfect. We're all trying to get there. So you have to have that humility and just say, everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah. And what you said about that rites of passage thing is so huge. People don't realize it. I'm pretty sure that's why I joined the Marine Corps, because I was looking for this rite of passage and to prove myself, right? Because I was always pretty tall, but I was always skinny. I used to hover around like 220, 230, but now I hover around like 180. So, I was like the older brother, so I never had like my 2 younger brothers. We would fight, but I was always the biggest one. Now my middle brother, I mean, he's a giant. He's not as tall as me, but he's huge. I wouldn't try to fight him now, but but they had that toughening up, where I never really had that, and I was always kind of seen, because I wore glasses, and I was always seen as like intellectual,
nerd alert,
or a nerd, yeah, stuff like that. Even though it was funny, because I always had friends, and I would always like think I'd feel bad because I'm like, everyone thinks I'm a nerd. But now looking back, I'm like, I always had friends though. Like, what the hell is wrong with me? But So I love what you said about being in that situation where now I know I don't have to prove myself. And it's also the same thing, multifaceted, just like you said with the diet. It's the same thing with being like intelligent and accepting that I'm actually smart and I see patterns. It's just the way my brain works. It doesn't make me any better than anyone else because the funny sidetrack is I'm friends with, or I've been friends in the past with people. And I remember there was this woman that I was dating years ago, and she had a really simple approach to everything and how she saw it. And when I first met her, when we weren't like dating or whatever, I thought she was like stupid, like kind of an airhead. But then she was really into like spirituality and all this stuff. So we connected. And what I realized was she picks up a lot of stuff that I miss because there's so many things that are really obvious. But if it's really obvious, sometimes I just miss it. That happens a lot with jokes too, when people say things or whatever. Sometimes I'll totally just miss it. And I realize that we need, kind of to stick together as a tribe. But what I was saying was, though, if you realize you don't have to prove yourself when it comes to that, or like being funny, now I know I'm funny. So I don't always have to try to be the funniest one in the room. If I see someone else, I could step back and then I could just snipe and add in, little funny comments to what they're saying. And it makes it even better because there's not a struggle. Like you said before, we're trying to help each other and build each other up. And it's a good feeling. There's none of this like backbiting. And I would do that also with one of my friends told me this one time, and I had no idea I was even doing it. And this was like probably when I was in my mid 20s. We used to, when I got back from the Marines, it was a friend I would hang out with, and we'd like go to bars or clubs and try to meet women. And he would say, he's like, every time we're talking to this one woman or a couple of people, he's like, you always try to cut me down and bring me down and make me look bad. Like you always make me the butt of the jokes. He's like, what's up with that? And at first I didn't realize it. I was just like, oh, fuck that guy. But we still remain friends, and I thought about it a lot, and that's helped me, so sometimes it is okay to, like, you don't have to sit back and be an observer the whole time, right? It's very nuanced. We're just taking that angle here when we're talking about different battles, but sometimes you could say something to somebody, even if you get elevated. There's this middle ground where now that you maybe are a little elevated than other people, but you don't have to judge them and you don't have to try to tear them down. You can think to yourself, how can I use this knowledge that I've gained to actually help people elevate themselves? What can I say or what can I do? And a lot of times it is by your own actions, but sometimes there's things you could say that, I'll use this analogy. It's kind of like if you have a nut that's green, right? That could be your total normie. And then you have a nut that's a little more dried out and ripe and it's ready. It just needs that little tap. And then it can open up and have the experience you did. So sometimes you just have to give it a little tap. And sometimes when they're green, you just totally have to lead by example or let them talk. And, so. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It's all fascinating. It's a
You felt
wild...
like you were listening to a podcast, didn't you?
I was, yeah. I pulled a you on the Balderson
That happened
podcast.
with me, yeah, with Balderson. That was great. I was like,
I'm the type of person who will talk for like an hour straight and have no problem talking, but then when other people do, I just zone out. Like not listening, I zone out so hard and thinking about the things that somebody else is saying, is that when it comes back around to me, I'm like, oh no, there's like a million things there that I want to touch on, and then I go blank. But no, it's fascinating watching people in life when you hit us. And I'm by no means like touting myself as, I think that the name is hilarious, Woodshop the Wise, because like I said, like I'm still so retarded in so many areas of life. But I think once you are given a certain amount of wisdom, it's interesting to watch other people operate because you can see all the things that you did in the past. So you go, at least I go, I hope that they will grow out of these things, but also I know that it's an important lesson to go through.
Absolutely.
So I'm not judging. I wish people well. I'm the type of person who forgives people while I'm being hurt. I have two younger brothers who are still in that phase of thinking that they know everything, and they say some very things that could potentially be very hurtful out of their own anger. And I immediately, like, while they're saying them, I'm forgiving them because I know they're not talking to me, they're talking to themselves.
Forgive
so,
them,
like,
for they know not what they do.
Exactly. And like that's the like that's the vibe that I want to have. Like that's the frequency that I want to operate on, is when people are hurting me, I'm actively forgiving them in the process, you know. And if you're Christian, that's literally what Jesus did. I mean, he had a spear getting shoved into him, hung up on a cross, and he was begging God for forgiveness. And that's what I want to be. Like that's what I want to emulate in my own life on a fractal level, because it's the only way to not personalize the way that other people are treating you, when you realize that they're not doing it because they actually hate you. You know, inside of them is a little inner child. And we do this thing where we disassociate our inner child with who we are now and say, oh, that was just me as a child, but now I'm older and wiser and smarter and stuff. And it's like, no, you're not. You're still that inner child. You've just been around longer. You've accumulated speech and writing, and you've accumulated a wealth of um, things that you've gone through, but you've also accumulated a lot of defense mechanisms and, a lot of manipulative behavior. And I don't mean that in a like a derogatory way. It's just a matter of fact, right? Like even as babies, right? Babies, you could argue, learn manipulation before they can even speak, because they know if they make a certain word, they'll get food, or if they make a certain noise, then they'll get their diaper changed. Like they have to learn how to control other people through their own behavior, because they can't vocalize yet. They don't have speech. They can't, and even, that prefrontal cortex isn't even fully developed until 25 years old. So it's like even a teenager can't make fully rational decisions. So they are still operating on a wave of, manipulation in a sense, when they're getting into arguments with their parents or something. Like they're not able to express themselves from a very deep understanding of themselves. It's much more emotional and reactive and trying to get what they want. So, uh, yeah, I try to forgive people, but it is interesting. It's interesting watching people go through life and seeing how angry they get when people try to better themselves, or they try to better themselves and then, like I said, punch down on other people. And to me, it's like, it's sad, because I think people don't realize, take a situation like that, right? You have one person trying to better themselves in some way, in a significant way, right? Um, like a spiritual way, they think that they found something. And then you have somebody else who's not on that level yet, or doesn't see the reasoning behind it, doesn't see why their friend or whoever is doing this. Then this person might punch down, but then person down here might go, what are you doing? You're changing. You're not supposed to change, but that's not healthy. It's not healthy to stay there forever. That's not why you're here on this life, to stay here on that one rung forever, because it currently suits you, you know, because it's not going to suit you in a couple years. I don't care who it is. It's not going to suit you. It's going to get tired and played out and bored. And then you're going to be left going, what do I do with my life? Because I made no progress. I didn't even try to climb that ladder. And now all of my friends who were once right there with me, and maybe, a rung or two higher, now they're so high that I can't even see them. And it's like, that to me is hell on earth. I don't want to be there. I want to grow, and I want to help other people grow. And a lot of this is born out of just fear. I talk about this all the time. It's fear.
Huge.
It's fear of losing somebody because they outgrow you. And again, that is a childhood defense mechanism to then attack that person for trying to better their life and grow, because you don't want that person to grow. Excuse me. You don't want that person to outgrow you. So you'll attack that person verbally, spiritually, emotionally, to try to stunt them so that they don't have enough energy to take that next step up. So they'll stay there with you and then go, hopefully in a few months or a year or whatever, we'll be cool again. That's not how it works. You're destroying things that could be good. Some of my best friends in this world are people that I don't talk to for a year. And then they'll just come around and we'll talk for a couple months and then they're gone again. I don't attack them. I don't lash out at them. my best friend in this world is Mormon, like proper Utah Mormon. And we go back to elementary school. We grew apart in high school. We didn't speak for a good 15 years. And then through all the COVID stuff or Corona stuff, sorry, he came back around and we reconnected and we talk like every day now. And you know, sometimes that's just how life goes. People have to go off and do their own thing, but
Yeah.
it's now I have that beautiful friendship where we can talk about things that happened when we were, 7 years old and like reminisce on all these things that happened almost 3 decades ago. And it's beautiful. And that wouldn't have been there if I would have let fear rule how I treated him at any point. So
Sharon.
That reminds me, I was just going to say, that reminds me that the last time we recorded with you for episode 25, everyone, pretty sure that's the one. Or was it 27? Now I'm confused.
27.
Shoot.
Joe was 25 because it equaled to 7.
Oh, 27. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And that's my birthday, 7/2. So it's backwards.
Oh, there you go. But we recorded on his birthday.
Yeah.
On Woodshop's birthday.
Oh, and it was episode 27, which is the anniversary of my birthday.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. What was your birthday again?
Me?
No, him.
Oh.
I'm August 3rd. I'm a Leo.
Okay, you're a Leo. Well, I'm a Leo rising. That's right. You said you were a Leo sometime. I can't remember when. Yeah.
Wow, I can't believe it was August. It's been that long. That's crazy.
I know. Dude, time.
Well, because I recorded with him in between then. So
yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe of that. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love what you said. I think you're 100% right, because think about like when, like I've made dietary choices, right? Like I'll stop eating bread or wheat, and people will, like, when I first started doing it, now they get it because there's like a whole I did it before the gluten-free fad. Like I was right on the surfing that wave.
Yeah, I know. We're always ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
I was asking for like protein style food before it was a thing.
Yeah.
And after I did it, they started raising prices on like protein. Like it used to just be like a couple dollars to like add protein or something. And then they would raise it like by a lot. And I was like, crap.
Yeah, it's like they charge you extra to have no bun if you're going to get a burger or something.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I think what happens though, what I was saying was that people will try to attack you. It's just like, I don't really drink that much. I went through phases in my life on and off, and now sometimes I'll drink like a couple glasses of wine or whatever right after I wake up. No, like toward the end of the day or whatever. But if you fall in with people, like I would go out drinking or go out to clubs, and when I stopped doing that, they would attack me or they would get upset about it. And like, oh, you've changed. You don't want to hang out anymore. You don't want to drink anymore or whatever it is. And that's exactly what they're doing, right? They're just kind of trying to pull you down, just like crabs in a bucket. And again, no judgment. They just are scared. They're, like you said, they're doing it from a place of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I guess you could say that's kind of like punching up, not in a comedic sense, but like in a life sense, like you're punching up, you're trying to weaken the person above you so they come back down to your level so you can feel better about yourself, because you see, hey, if this person can do it, if this person can quit, biting their fingernails, I can do it too. But there's no way. I just got to keep biting my fingernails. That's one thing I've overcome in my life.
Me too.
Oh my God, I don't even think about it anymore. But now I'm like, wow, that's amazing, because I used to bite my fingernails, and then I would also just like rub like this, like when I was anxious or whatever, and I get like little
indents,
and like it would get like cut or whatever. My skin was. And now I could see other people that do that. And not that I'm judging them or whatever, but I just realized that what an open sign it is to other people that you're just like,
escapism.
Or you have like anxiety, or you're just like freaking out, like it's a whole different thing. People don't realize the body language, what we put off to other people and what we put in their brains as what they think we're doing. And going back to what I said before, when you're just in a room calm and you could stand there and not like fidget. I mean, I like to move. I'm kind of a movement person anyway, but you're not doing like nervous ticks. You're just standing up comfortable, kind of looking around, like I try to put my hands like this, or just I'm conscious of where my hands are instead of just like going crazy. So yeah, I think it's a totally different message you put out, and we don't even realize it. Like Sharon and I talked about this before, when I was sexualizing women a lot more back in my days, in just the way that I talked and the way that I carried myself, people looked at me differently. And what you don't realize is you're making yourself more of a target, because some people realize that about you. So they'll use nefarious means to try to get to you. You know, if they could realize you're a sex addict or whatever, they might lure you into something, or who knows what you're opening yourself up to. So yeah, it's something to be very conscious of.
Something I want to say about that too is um, it's not always someone's time to stop doing something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh
Something that
yeah.
people often forget. They go, I found this new diet and I feel so good. That person might not be ready for a dietary change that's going to change them, because they need to resolve some deep trauma inside of themselves, right?
Yep.
Or it might just not be God's time for them, you know? So
Yep.
when we try to impose healing on people, it's not healing, and oftentimes is actually detrimental, because then it has the opposite effect of them going, oh, now this person is healing themselves. And now I feel worse about myself because they told me I should do it, but I know I'm not ready to do it. There's something inside of me holding me back from doing it. So then it starts that negative feedback loop in their own brain, and actually can hurt that person. You know, if somebody comes to you and questions you and says, hey, I've noticed you've changed in these ways. What have you done? I want to do that as well. They have opened the door.
Mm-hmm.
Greet them at that door, invite them in, you know, give them a warm drink and then sit down and talk about it. But you don't go knocking on people. This is why I've always had an issue with, like, religious people that door knock. It's like, I'm not bashing you for
Oh,
your religion or anything, but I'm trying to handle my two young children. I have two dogs that you just knocked on my door. I have two 85-pound pit bull boxer mixes who are now barreling down the hallway trying to get to the door. I don't want to talk theology with you right now. It's not the time, it's not the place. Um, but yeah, we do that in our own life too. Like we find something that works. I tried, as I said, vegetarianism. I did a full on carnivore diet about 4 years ago now, right before our first daughter was born. I did it for about 6 months. And again, I'm just headstrong, cold turkey type person. So I woke up one morning and was like, I'm so tired of being this fat. I'm so tired of feeling this unhealthy. I have a daughter on the way. I need to be strong for her. I need to lose weight and get healthy. Um, and I have a lot of autoimmune issues from getting jabbed as a kid. So I was in the hospital many times with like organ failure in
oh
emergency
no.
rooms, and I would get allergic reactions to stuff and jabs and have to have like adrenaline shots into my hip and stuff. And it was wild when I was a kid. But I got to try to clean up my diet. So I'm just doing full elimination diet. I ate nothing but steak, eggs, water, and salt for like 6 months. It was so easy for me. I've never felt better. I lost 80 pounds about 4 years ago. My energy was just consistent and through the roof. I woke up in the morning. I didn't feel tired. It was like I opened my eyes and I was like, let's go, hop out of bed. My inflammation was down. My pain was down. I was moving better. I wasn't nearly as anxious. I felt like I was seeing in like HD for the first time after watching like an old tube television for my entire life.
Wow.
My senses were more acute. Everything was incredible. And I went off of that. I tried to do it again recently and I couldn't do it. I couldn't even make it like 2 days. And that's something really important that people need to understand, is just because something's good for you um, at a certain point in your life, it doesn't mean that it's going to be good for you forever, because there are innumerable variables in this life that have an effect on you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. And every one of those variables changes how different stimuli is going to affect you, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's food, whether it's a certain relationship, whether it's a certain type of music or movies or whatever. It's going to have an effect on you. So because something was good for you in your past doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you in your future. And it doesn't mean
Perfectly
that
stated.
it's not going to be good for you later down the road either. It's just maybe right in the here and now you need to do something else. Everything in this life is a tool, right?
Absolutely.
If I have a
Perfectly
nail that
stated.
I need to drive in, I'm going to use a hammer, but I'm
Mhm.
not going to turn around and use that hammer to try to screw in a screw. There are
Yeah.
different tools for different purposes, and it depends on what you're doing in your own life. So don't get hung up on something's good for me, so it's going to be good forever. There's a constant ebb and flow of life, and that affects you as well, not just other people.
Yeah, I found the same thing with meditation. I used to meditate hardcore for like hours a day, and then I got to a point where it just didn't feel like it. Now I do it once in a while, but yeah, it's the
Me
same thing.
too.
Sometimes you need to go to an extreme to correct the balance. It's like if you're falling over, sometimes you got to go way far this way to kind of get your balance back.
Yeah. Same here. I was doing meditation, yoga, and walking in the mornings. That was like taking my whole morning doing that whole routine. And I had to do that for a little while. It just that was my time for myself. And it worked for however long it lasted. And yeah. But it's
Uh,
like
s-
we were
Go ahead, go ahead.
it's just quickly, like we were saying in a previous episode, your body enjoys different things. It enjoys, and I'm sure Pat Life has probably mentioned this, but like doing something different and doing something out of the ordinary that your body's not necessarily used to all the time is like it's very healthy for your body, and your body enjoys that and uses it for good.
Yeah, that goes right back to what we were saying earlier about changing up your routines and your different habits. Same thing. Yeah, I think it's beneficial for you no matter what you change up because you're giving yourself challenges. Because if you it's not that it's bad to master one thing, but if you're doing the same thing every day, then your skills lessen in other things that you could be doing. So when you keep this balance going, not only is it a challenge, but you're just making yourself better, you know? And that brings me to what I was going to say, because I was saying we were talking about all this healing and all this stuff, but I wanted to bring up the books, excuse me, the book and stuff that you're writing. But the question I would have for you is how do you feel that process has healed you or helped you heal by going and writing a book? And you could tell people about the book a little bit so they know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so last year I started writing a book. Excuse me. I really liked reading as a child, but we were poor. We didn't go to the bookstore that often. And we didn't have like a home library or anything. And then life happens, right? And I stopped reading. Um, I won't say I stopped reading. I'll say behind me here, you can see I have a bookshelf up here. It's loaded with books. They're all conspiracy, ancient cultures, religious. There's a couple proper new age books in there from years ago.
How dare you?
But yeah, I started reading books like that. It was a quest for knowledge and to just understand the world. And I spent probably like 15 years reading books like that. Everything, everything. I got really into ancient cultures and like old religions and trying to learn about them. I've read dozens of books about like ancient Sumerian and their pantheon of gods. And it's fascinating, right? Reading all these stories because you have like the Zechariah Sitchins who hotly debated. There's some hot takes out there on him, but then you also have a lot of other really well respected doctors who have studied this stuff too, and it's just fascinating to read because their origin stories and their pantheon of gods and all the stuff that they talk about is pretty wild. So I got roped into that for many years, and but I stopped reading like fantasy and stuff. I read The Hobbit when I was a kid, and it was my favorite book. It changed my life. And it almost bummed me out at like 7 or 8 years old because I was like, I'm never finding a book better than this. I feel like I've read the best book on earth. This is kind of a bummer because I have to go my whole life now. And my dad brought home some paperback copies out of nowhere. And it was like, that was big for me as a child. to just, if it wasn't my birthday or Christmas or something, to have my dad bring something home was huge. But he brought home some little paperback copies of Lord of the Rings, gave them to me, and I'm like, you're out of your mind. These are huge books. Why would I get invested in this? And he just looks at me and he goes, it's what happens after The Hobbit. And I was like, oh my God. And I took them and I started reading them. So that was that. He gave me my first set of Lord of the Rings probably at 10 or 11 years old. And I read them through, and it's, no going back since then. But I spent 15 years reading all of this stuff and then just experiencing life, and growing. And I realized that as you become an adult, there's like this, well, for a lot of people, there's like this stigma of like reading fantasy or sci-fi or whatever. It's this weird tiered list of social acceptance, right? Like sci-fi is more acceptable than fantasy because sci-fi actually has technology and it's kind of rooted in, yeah, exactly. But for me, I'm like, it makes sense to do it the other way. And it's like, I think about how my life was altered by Tolkien, who wrote these books later in life. He was past his midlife by the time that he wrote these books and released them. And he wrote these books based upon what he had seen. Like, he experienced World War One. He went through all of that, and then he found a way to explain that and just bury truth in those books and these themes that are persistent throughout all of time and all of culture. And I realized how much power there is in that. Like, it's hard to wake somebody up when they're set in their ways for 3 or 4 decades. It's much easier to plant a seed and have somebody have it just kind of germinate, for 20 years, and then have like me or like Brandon, like we're both Lord of the Rings nerds hard. So to be able to look at those books differently at 30, 40 years old than you did when you were 10 years old, and just go, the magnitude of truth that is in these books, and they're designed for children originally, is fascinatingly powerful. So I went, I think that that's something that I would like to do, because I have a lot to say, but I just, I couldn't sit down and read a book about my life. I'd be so bored, like if it was just a chronological order of, oh, when I was 25 years old, I went through this, and then this is the wisdom that I got. And then when I was 26, I went through this, and then this is the wisdom that I got. And then I had a major revelation at 27. I don't want to do that. I'd rather just take the wisdom that I got and write it into a story that is engaging for children and try to plant those seeds in them. So I've been writing for
an embedded autobiography, if you will.
Yeah, in a way. And I think what I find most beautiful about that is that I'm removing myself from it. I use my name in it, and I kind of based some of these characters around people in a community, but it's not like a biography on me. I'm not a main character. I'm just like a side character in this thing. But it's a way to like embed the actual knowledge and the wisdom in a story that is not boring. So it's been super fun. I'm going to have to do a pretty significant rewrite of it. I've already gone back and edited a ton of it, but as things change, and it's been 7 or 8 months since I finished the first draft now, a lot's changed in my life. A lot has changed in the world. I've gotten some very heavy revelations in that time. A lot of change has happened inside of me. So I'm going to go back and do a major rewrite, maybe just start over. Honestly, I don't even know. That's the fun part about life, though, is like you're able to do that when inspiration hits you. So
I want to break in real quick because I think, everything you're saying is amazing. I love it. I'm actually gonna be like, we should collaborate on something sometime. But what I wanted to say, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all that stuff is great for children, but it's also great for, like, how can I say this without being rude? But it's like It's like an not indoctrination. What do they call it when you induct somebody?
Revelation of
When you induct
initiation.
initiation, there you go. It's like an initiation. And then after that, the Dune book series is like the next level. It's crazy. I'm not saying it's better because I love Lord of the Rings too, but I don't like to pick like a better one. But for being sci-fi and like I would say Lord of the Rings is our past and Dune is our future, you know.
Holy
So
smokes.
we could get something out of both. Anyway,
Yeah,
I love what
absolutely.
you're
And
saying.
it kind of opened it up to like, I now have, I don't know, I haven't counted them. I have so many books now, fantasy books, and I've just been reading for the last year. I really slunk back from a lot of the things that I was engaging in over the last year and gave my time towards reading because I kind of just had that revelation last year of there's so much hidden truth buried in Lord of the Rings, and there's millions of other books out there, like fantasy books. So I want to, I feel like I was stuck on like micro knowledge for like 15 years, and now I want to go into the macro. Like I want to get into the themes. I want
Big
to get
picture.
into those things that reverberate, across millennia, because those are the things that matter. It's I see the dogma fights, and I see theology fights and stuff, and I go, that's micro to me because the macro is so much deeper and so much more profound than the things that we're arguing about. Like you're going to hell because you don't say Yeshua, you say Jesus. And I'm like, fuck all the
Mm.
way off and then just continue fucking off. And then just
That
like, it's so stupid and
When you get
like,
to heaven, keep fucking off too.
yeah,
that was
it's
me.
so petty to
That was
me.
me like 3 or 4 years ago. And I was just like, okay, you're trying to tell me that you have to pronounce it this way. And some people were like, no, making videos like, how dare you have to pronounce the name of God like this. And I just was like, does this even matter? Like, wouldn't God know his own fucking name? Pardon my French.
Right.
But like, does it fucking matter? No.
You know what the
Sharon, how
cool thing
dare you?
is? No, you know what the cool thing is about life? You can call him Jesus, or you could call him Yeshua, or you could call him Yahshua, or you could call him Yahushua. You could call him anything that you want
You can
because
call him God.
energy, you
I
You
can
can call
prefer
him the universe. You
I
can
prefer
call
energy
him.
energy does not require words. That's
I
what people
prefer
really need to realize. Go for it. I want to hear
I prefer Jesus.
it.
Sorry, go
Right?
ahead.
But I'll use an analogy here that I will tie in. Whew, deep breath. This is going to take a second.
I got something I
Um,
could say real quick if you want.
Go for it.
I
Yeah.
love what you just said about going and wanting to study the macro because in this, in a lot of the stuff I've looked into in my cosmology, it's all about know yourself, go inside, get to know yourself. But they also you hear people say as above, so below. So I think if you spend the proper time within, then you should also spend time without studying the world or these works of fiction or even getting out in nature and studying things because then you could say as above so below, and if you could see how it works out here or even the sky, then you could you'll really be doing the inner work and like knowing yourself but by knowing the world and using the as above so below. But yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah.
throw that in.
So one add on to that, one of the things that I really appreciate about reading, especially like fantasy stories, is the world building aspect of it, right? You can't appreciate that if your mind is cluttered with a million other things. When you're reading about this thing and they're painting this picture of a landscape and a time and an atmosphere and a whole vibe and everything, if you're busy in your head, you'll read an entire page and then just go, I didn't retain any of that. It's almost to me like a form of meditation in a way because you have to shut off all of the nonsense to be able to even read the pages. And then when you read the pages is when the actual wisdom is absorbed. And this isn't just in fantasy, this is in the Bible as well. Read through a page of the Bible. If you're thinking about, like crazy stuff that's going on in your life or drama that you've heard about or something you saw on the internet, you're not going to retain any of that. You're going to lose everything that was meant to go into you. So that's been a really healing thing for me, is being able to acknowledge that and then consciously turn those things off in my mind so that I'm able to read. But what was I going to say? Oh, okay. So I was going to say, when we talk about these petty arguments, like what is, Jesus's name, we're getting hung up on the actual wording, but energy, yeah, energy doesn't require words. So like a child, a baby, I've never felt more love than from my children before they could speak. How do we explain that? They weren't calling me dad. They weren't calling me Nicholas. They weren't calling me anything. They weren't calling me Woodshop the Wise. They were not making any noise. They were looking at me, right? Or they were touching my face or something. But we're in a world where it's like we're told that we have to focus on that micro, and it extends everywhere, and it's like it's all connected as well. So we're in a society where these days, which I took part in for many years because I was exposed to it at a very young age, where pornographic images and videos are very prevalent, right? And the
Yes.
way that these acts are depicted in these videos is very violent and very vocal oftentimes, really focusing on the vocal, on the words used, on the names people are called, or expressing vocally what's happening while it's being done and stuff. It's not great. It's like you could engage in sex like that, but anybody who has engaged in sex where there isn't a single word spoken, and it's from a place of love with a partner who you really care about, knows how much more powerful that is. It's not even in the same realm, right? That's why I think they call that making love, because there's actual love in that act between two people. And it's no coincidence, because I'm reading through the Old Testament right now, and I'm reading, and I keep seeing Baal and Ashtaroth, or Asheroth, in there. So I start digging into this. Well, who's Asheroth? And Asheroth is or Ashtaroth. There's multiple spellings, and even in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
How dare them? They didn't use the same spelling.
No consistency.
No consistency. And so I start looking into her, and they also use balls plural. So I'm like, I've never heard that. I've only ever heard Baal spoken about as a single deity, right? Like the old Canaanite Phoenician deity that they prayed to. And
What
so I
is the
started
plural
looking
you've
into it.
seen?
In the Bible, it's referenced quite a few times where it says they threw down their balls, or they prayed
Oh,
to their balls.
they're
And
Baals. Okay.
their
Yeah, yeah,
Baals. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
How dare me?
Yeah,
but
everybody pronounces it differently.
yeah, so I start looking into Asheroth, and it's just fascinating, because when you draw back from the micro and you see the macro, and this is stuff that I've been studying with all this stuff for 15 years, is how these deities are the same. They just get transformed through the millennia into new cultures, right? It's a repackaging so that people will continue to worship. That in itself tells you that the words don't matter, because you're still worshiping the same deity, just with a different name. But Ashtaroth goes on to become Aphrodite and Venus in like Greek and Roman cultures and stuff. So if you look into her, she represents like sexuality. And it's crazy, because she ends up going on to have a child in these other pantheons, like in Greek and Roman. I forget which one is which, but one of them, she has a child named Eros, which is where we get erotica from. And in another one, she goes on to have a name of, or no, she was a prostitute, and the name for prostitute was pornos or pornus or something. Porno.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like, when you read the Bible, when the Israelites repeatedly over centuries kept going back to worshiping their Baals and their Ashtaroth, it's because they were engaging in that act. They were engaged. They would become kind of based and kind of moral, And then they would go on to revert back into prostitution, open prostitution in the streets. They would have brothels where they would, and the prostitution was happening in the in like these churches that they would put up for Baal and Ashtaroth. And it's like that Ashtaroth spirit is a macro, it's not a micro. People get hung up on the micro, but if you were to have that Ashtaroth figure come back into society and she represents prostitution, public nudity, public, engaging publicly in sex, pornography, erotica, lust, all of this stuff, it's going to take over a society. And I look at that the last 40, 50 years here in the United States, just the world in general, it kind of seems like that's taken over. No different than back then. So we look at it and we go, what's happening? Oh, the world is falling apart. It's crumbling. And it's like,
just
no,
cycles and patterns.
We just have a short lifespan. Open your books, not even just the Bible, but open all of your other books and read about this stuff. Like read about what was happening during the Saturnalia festivals, read about what was happening in the Bible, in the Old Testament. It's cycles that happen, but we only see one of them. We might see the beginning of a second one if we're lucky and we make it to 120 years old. But I think that might be why we have such short lifespans, honestly, because if you were living through 3 or 4 of these, the shit's not working anymore. You're going, no, I remember back in my first century when this shit popped off. I'm not going to listen to this. I'm not going to engage in it again. But I think that's part of it's like a blessing and a curse, right? Because you go, if I lived 1,000 years like some of these patriarchs lived in the Old Testament, oh, it would be so easy, right? Some of these people weren't having kids, so they were like 500 years old, right? They had 500 years to learn before they had to take on a family. That would be epic. But then you also go, I kind of like the challenge. I like the challenge of not knowing firsthand what happened last time,
It reminds me,
I feel anyways.
Yeah, it reminds me of the stuff that Brendan and I talk about sometimes about this realm, what it's meant for, and some of the information that we've just looked into that resonates with us and makes sense. And one of those things is called the law of one, but it's this concept of, this realm is meant for this 3D realm that we're experiencing is meant for the purposes of having those learning and growth experiences where you have to make choices, you have the free will, right? And then you also have that memory wipe when you first come into the realm. You don't, just like you were saying, like if we lived 300 years, 500 years, like we would see these cycles like 4 or 5 times and we'd be like, okay, I get it now. I ain't doing that shit again, but like we don't, and where our memories are wiped when we come into this realm. Some people actually begin to, even as children, will remember things about a previous past life that's been documented before. But yes, most of us come in and we're just like, I don't remember jack squat. I'm starting from scratch. And so you experience this life and you can grow and you can learn a lot of things because you don't know, like you said.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
there's that challenge.
100%. It's like you need that veil of forgetfulness. All these people that think this is a
simulation,
or even if they think it's like a loosh farm, like we're here and we're getting taken advantage of and all this stuff. And they would say, well, why is there, if we're here to learn, our soul's here to learn, then why do we forget? And, it's like, well, it's so you can learn these lessons over again. It's what Sharon just said. Go back and rewind this if you need to know. And another thing I wanted to say too is kind of about reincarnation, because obviously nobody knows what the hell this is, right? We're just like, what the hell is this realm? And we come up with concepts like reincarnation, but if you look at it in a more allegorical sense, it could even be, because I feel like we're energy. And right now we're having this physical experience, but we're still energy. So if we were energy, that means at one level, if you look at this, we're all one, right? Then that's how I think the collective consciousness works, because we have this individuality because we're a physical realm, but then we're still connected to the collective. And I talk about this all the time when people try to demonize normies and stuff. I'm like, we're still, we think we have all this knowledge. Going back to what you were saying earlier, we think we're above the normies that are like wearing masks and all this stuff, but we don't realize that we're still connected to the collective consciousness, and it's gonna affect
And we
us.
were normies once, could it be?
Yeah, exactly. We were normies at one time. So it's like, why are you judging yourself really at the end of the day? But what I wanted to say though about the whole reincarnation thing is the way it could work too, because we're all energy and we're all one. There might not be an individual Brandon. I know, guys, I know you're going to be upset and depressed, and our audience is going to be like, how could you say this? It's blasphemy, Brandon. I know maybe there isn't an individual Brandon that exists just in this physical while we're tricking ourselves, right? So our past memories could be connected to that. So it doesn't mean that we just keep coming back as this, but we just have, maybe there's a trajectory of part of this energy that's going through, and when it hits this physical experience that we're having, I hope I'm not getting ahead of people, but so we're in this physical, we have traits that we bring along, and we're here to raise our consciousness because of it. And then as we do it as a whole, we move up, and that's exactly what the law of one talks about. So I just wanted to add that in there because it could work in several different cosmologies. That's why I always try to like broaden it so much, because it fits right in with Christianity. And something I wanted to say too, we've been getting a lot of new subscribers. So shout out to you guys. Thank you guys so much. We love it. Keep loving and liking and hitting it and sharing us around, hitting the thumbs up and sharing us around. Accidentally funny. But what I wanted to say was, here on the Over Sharon show, you only heard Nick talk about Christianity. So you might be like, are these guys Christians or what are they doing? We always say that we don't really care. We're like heathen adjacent, whatever it is. But if you have a cosmology that allows you to want to choose and love every day to walk the golden rule, and don't want it, like you have this adverse reaction to not walking the golden rule, and when you realize you didn't do it, you try to correct it, you're great in my book. If that's your state of mind, I don't care whatever you say that you pray to. You could be praying to balls, all right? If you pray to balls, and I was going to say earlier, but I want to interrupt you, like sweat from my balls, it really makes you think. That sounds graphic, right? But if balls is this deity, sweat from him is like something that you're actually worshiping. You know what I mean? Like it's like, it could be, yeah. So it's so crazy how our language is tangled up, but I just want to throw those two things in there. But yeah, Sharon, you nailed it with that law of one thing.
I want to touch too on that as well, what you just said. I think a lot of people, especially in the community that we're in, might think of me as like a devout Christian. And I just want to reiterate that I've had 15 years of studying other religions, trying them on for size, seeing what worked in them, trying to find the truth in them. I can tell you all about ancient Sumerian. I could sit down and talk to you for a week about Enki and Enlil and, Marduk and Ningshita and all the stuff that happened in their origin stories. I can talk Siddhartha, Buddha. I can talk Hinduism and stuff because I was seeing truth in all of them, right? Like in Ezekiel, when he talks about the crafts and the wheels within the wheels and the chariots in the sky, and then you go over to Hinduism and you go, well, the Vimanas have that as well. Like that's what they're talking about there, and then they're talking about it over here and here and here, and that's why I went on that.
Astrotheology, could it be?
Could it be?
Let me sneak something in really quick too, because Sharon and I, we're on several different sources of information. Some are a little,
I knew you were gonna. I wanted to, but you can,
but,
Brandon.
So there's this piece of information that I came across that makes a lot of sense, and I don't think the source matters. And what it is that Zecharia Sitchin, he did a lot of great work, but he seemed to misinterpret time when he looked at the Sumerians, and they would use this time of measurement unit of measurement called a shar. Now it makes a lot more sense if you look at it, and we don't have to like go into why, but look into it for yourself. You are shar, you're sharing on, but it looks like that a shar didn't represent a year, but there's a lot of research that would probably just represent a day. So these times that we think that were 50, 100,000 years ago might have just been 5,000, 6,000 years ago. Like these floods they talk about, it probably happened. There's a lot of evidence to suggest it. I mean, the flood story alone, just it comes up in so many different, texts and stories and stuff. So if we have these stories that are closer to us, I think we can connect and relate with them a lot more, and then we could see ourselves more in that story. We're in
100
Lord of the Rings just in the future, and then Dune happens later. I mean, I'm telling you guys, could it be?
100%. And like Zechariah Sitchin also, uh, it's not a bash because I don't know, I'm not involved in it, right? But he was a high up Mason. So it's like, I think that
Wasn't he
people
Jewish too? Not that that matters, everybody. I'm just,
allegedly. Um, but yeah, it makes sense because when you look at those old stories, it'll say like, for those that have never looked into all this stuff, they had these like weapons, these things of power that they would have with them, right? And maybe Marduk would get one, and then he would rule over people for allegedly like 30,000 years, right? And then Ningshita would steal it from him, and then Ningshita would rule for 40,000 years and stuff. But if that Shar is wrong, then it could have been, oh, he ruled for 20 years. Makes a lot more sense. And when you're talking about the flood and stuff, we talk about like Atlantis and Lemuria and stuff, and then we find the Rikot structure in Africa, and it's like that's kind of depicted exactly like how it's described. And that's why I always keep an open mind, because I go, there's truth in everything, and I think that's 100% intentional to fracture that truth, give every group a little morsel of it, and then have them fight saying, well, no, we actually have the truth, because it's like, there's a lot of truth in Buddhism, right? But that doesn't mean that everything in Buddhism is right. And it doesn't mean that it's the full truth. There's a lot of truth in Christianity. It's not the full truth. It's not. They're not going to see. This is the hard part that I have with religion in general, is people get so dogmatic and say everybody else is wrong, and I go, are you fucking retarded? Do you think that they're gonna release the entire truth to you freely?
Exactly.
And if they did, why aren't you perfect, and why is the world not perfect? No, they give you just enough to make you start feeling like you're better than other people, so you will punch down.
How dare you?
And we've been doing it for thousands of years. It's a puzzle. It's supposed to be fun. You should be reading books about Sumerian. You should be reading books about Roman and Greek. You should be reading about what the old Akkadians used to think. You should be reading about all of this, and then modern stuff as well. Read the Quran, read the Bible, read these things, and then find the truth in there.
I just have to interject quickly, because I think they kind of do give you the full truth in the Bible if you have the right eyes to see it. And when I say that, I just mean just simply Christ, his story, just like walking that. If you could pick up on the parables, because we always talk about how parables are funny to some people and a fun story, and then to other people, they're like, oh my God, it's like blowing my mind, right? So yeah, anyway, but yeah, go ahead. I know exactly what you mean, though, and I think you're 100% right, but it's just that misinterpretation of all this stuff, or the idol worship of it, or putting it on a pedestal. Anytime we put
that's
it
better.
On a pedestal.
That's a better way to put it, is the interpretation of it.
But I know what you meant. I'm just busting your balls. Your balls.
No, yeah, people who I love this. I love this theme. No, people who are like, that Protestant is going to burn in hell, or that Catholic, or that Orthodox, or I'm like, or all of you, because you're saying that about other living men and women, and you're thinking that you're better than people. It's like, I would say that I'm more aligned with like Christianity than anything, but I also really like vibe with like paganism in a weird way. I think there's a lot of truth there. And then I also really vibe in a certain way with like original Gnosticism, not like New Age Gnosticism, but you read the story of creation from the Gnostic perspective back then, which, oh man, this could be such a long podcast. It's like Gnosticism today is it morphed into this weird new agey type thing. But Gnosticism back in the day was like a derogatory term that they used for anybody who wasn't going on with the agreed
Going
upon
along.
going along. Yeah. So it was like all of these different weird little sects that had their own things that they believed in. They just lumped them into Gnosticism. But the basis for like Gnostic creation was at one point there was one creator. And I'm going to butcher this and just trying to sum it up really quickly, but there was one creator. He was everything. He knew everything. And eventually it became too much and he went mad and he needed to experience again because he'd experienced everything. There was no new perception. There was no new perspective. He had done it all. So he fractures himself into these um, different parts of himself. And then, that's where we get Sophia, and she kind of like embodied wisdom and stuff, which is ironic because then she wants to create and she accidentally makes the demiurge, which is like the god they said of the Old Testament, the one who created the 3D realm that we're now occupying. But their thing is that we all have a little bit of that God inside of us, which is what attaches us together and also connects us to the creator, because we're here to excuse me, we're here to collectively experience everything again and then find our way back home to the truth, which is that everything is connected. Whatever, that's a really horrible way of describing it, but that's like the Cliff Notes retard version.
You
So I
basically said
see
what I just said. I mean, it's amazing, right? With the
yeah,
whole
and it's like
consciousness.
I see truth in that, right?
Yeah.
I've had weird thought experiments in the past where it like clicked with me because I'd be thinking about something and having this weird thing happen where I go, I have this voice in my head, right? Your internal monologue. And when you're thinking, you're running through ideas and stuff. And when you're in a time of like argument, this happened while I was arguing with my wife, probably 7-8 years ago. And it shook me hard because I'm having all these thoughts about her. But then I go, but she has an inner voice too that's probably having thoughts about me. But I think that my inner voice is my own. But what if I'm like the inner voice inside of me is actually the same thing that's inside of her thinking about me, and we're experiencing each other from two different points of view? And it rocked my world for a minute because that kind of like launched me down a path of like, who even am I? Like,
Right.
what even is this voice in my head? Why is it there? Where is it coming from? But
I
yeah,
had
it's
that
all a
moment
trip, man.
once.
And that dogma, dude, is what stops you. It's an ego trap. This world is like literally just like if you put a million mouse traps down, they're all ego traps for you to get stuck in so you don't move forward or up or
Oh,
however you want to
totally.
orient it.
Totally.
Every method is a trap. That's a quote by
Ram
Ram
Dass.
Dass. And
I've
even trying
been
to get attached to Ram Dass is a trap, but that dude
right.
definitely spoke some gravy.
Right. I don't he's not my guru or anything, but I do enjoy listening to his lectures. I have one of them on Audible, and it's just every once in a while I'll go and play it, and it's insane how timely it always is. Cuz these lectures are like Brandon, how long are they? Like 20 something hours
Yeah,
of
well, they're
lectures?
broken up into like 2 hours, sometimes an hour, sometimes 3 hours. But yeah, it's like an audio book, so it's very long.
Yeah.
You could just keep going because one of them it's a whole presentation he did at Naropa one year
Yeah.
about the Bhagavad Gita, and it's just
Yeah.
broken up into different days. But you could just binge it. I mean,
That's the one. And I still haven't even listened to it fully in its entire piece,
I'm
but
so
like I'll
jealous.
just come back and like play it for a little bit one day. I'll just feel inspired to click on play, and it'll always be so timely to what I'm experiencing right then. I'm just like I always want to just like clip it and send it to somebody, but I can't. I mean, I could, but it just takes too long. But it's just always really timely. But yes, I do love listening to Ram Dass
You could
for that
totally send
stuff.
it to me anytime because I do that as well. There was a time in my life, this is around the time, probably right before I had to experience just like Nick also with that. And it's probably when I was like into mushrooms and stuff heavily and like getting really, really high on weed. And, when I was first coming back to weed, because I hadn't smoked, from like the age of 18 to like 36, maybe a handful of times. When I joined the Marines, I just quit cold turkey. I'm like Nick in that regard. I'm like, I guess I'm just not doing it now. So, anyway, what was I saying, Sharon?
Ram Dass. I was
Yes,
talking
yes,
about.
yes. Oh no, I had that whole I remember now. So I had that moment where I was like, mine was a little different. I was like, I wonder for all the same consciousness, right? But we just because of what we've gone through and experienced and the parents and all that stuff we had, we just have different like mannerisms and hobbies and different opinions and all that stuff. And then when I came across the 16 personality types, and it lines up heavily with astrology also, but the 16 personality types, I feel it's more like a logical way to look at it. Not that it's better or whatever, but if you're logical minded, sometimes it works better. So I feel like that could be possible integrated with those 16 personality types. So if there's just really 16 personalities, and then you also have to double it because there's men and women and they get affected in different ways because of that. But and then we all basically start off almost the same, but even stuff that happens while we're in the womb affects us, all this stuff our parents. So we might be the same consciousness, but then we get this download to everyone who's ever been in our line and all the trauma, right? So then we have to deal with it. And now we're these beings with all this downloaded trauma. We're all pretty much the same. But since we see things from a different angle, we're just like button heads because it's like before you were punching down on the ladder or punching up. And I think that kind of describes our whole society as we see it. And maybe getting out of that is what is going to make the world better in the long run. But really, the only way to make the world better in the physical is just to do it on yourself, I think, like we always talk about, right? So, but in that way, and if you bring it back to law one, that is how our consciousness evolves and goes up. Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. And I feel like it also falls in line with a function of this realm when, because I do kind of believe that we're plagued by some kind of form of a reset, like a destruction or whatever, every certain amount or whatever. But even if you don't agree, it's every whatever years. But I think when it comes in is when too many people are just super comfortable and they're not learning. They're just engaging in what we would call debauchery, right? Which I've done and it's great. And if you need to do it, go do it until you're done, whatever.
And
But
escapism.
escapism. But I think when enough people get to that level, they're not learning anymore because it's just this constant feedback loop, right? So if we were this realm, where it's a spiritual realm where we don't understand it, maybe when that certain amount of people, and even some simulation theory people think that this is why it happens because it's a reset, but I'm explaining it from my realm theory point of view. Excuse me, for consciousness. At that point, consciousness isn't learning, and then certain people in that society, though, their consciousness is going to raise a bunch because they're going to be learning from what's going on and how crazy it is, right? So they're going to want to bring it up. So these people, their consciousness shoots up huge, and then they pull up people around them, but they're not going to pull everybody up. So maybe this reset function comes in and a bunch of people get wiped out, but all the people that had the raised consciousness, somehow they're saved to go on to the next
Raptured, could
iteration,
it be?
raptured or whatever. And then
Harvested?
when this section of the consciousness, after all those people die and then they're reset into babies into this realm again, they're going to have an automatic upgrade that way because they're going to be treated with all this love. All that trauma was healed now through the people who survived through the cataclysm or whatever it is, so it's a beautiful thing. It's really nothing to fear. But yeah, I don't remember what started me on that
Yeah.
Well,
rant.
this
But
is biblical as well.
Love
In the
that.
Old Testament, it's as soon as the Israelites go back to worshiping their balls. I know it's some people prefer Baal, but it's so much funnier when you say
it
worshiping
really
their
is.
balls because it's literally true. When they start worshiping their balls,
Yeah,
um,
that's why. And I think
yeah,
also by saying it so much, it'll wake people up to what's going on. It's
exactly.
like, yeah,
Great rhetoric.
yeah, it
But when
is.
you're worshiping your balls, instead of worshiping the creator is when he would give the Israelites over to other kings, to the Philistines or the Amalekites or whatever it is. He would give them over and you would see, you know, whatever it was, 20, 30, 50,000 Israelites die in one day in battle because they they displeased God. They didn't listen to what he commanded of them. So it's like, again, those short lifespans, right? And I talked about this recently in a couple places, but I go, we look at things that are happening now, like experimental medical serums, or stuff in food that's, really high fructose or whatever it is, whatever you want to point your finger at when you're stuck on the micro and say, this is why it's happening. This is why people are sick. People are sick because of their own sin. Like people are sick because people are sick because in Deuteronomy, again, like I'm coming at it from this angle because I see so much truth in it, right? And it resonates and I can see it in this real world. But in Deuteronomy, Moses, before they enter into the promised land, right? Moses doesn't enter into the promised land, but he gives these instructions to the people. And he says, here's a list of the promises of like curses that will be given to you should you not listen to me. In this list, it talks about it. It's like 2 or 3 pages long in, tiny Bible script. Some of the craziest stuff, but it says, I read through this a couple weeks ago, and it says the rain from your clouds will fall like dust. And I just go, my truther brain goes chemtrails. And then it says, I will inflict you with fiery heart and inflammation. And I go, exactly what's happening right now with experimental medical serums and people dropping like flies. And then I go, your children will be given to another people and you will long for them for the rest of your life failingly because they are gone and will never basically be your children again. And I go, like being swayed into chopping off genitalia or taking, hormones for your entire life. And then you as a parent are going, I'll never get my child back. Even if they decide that they want to change later, physically, I can't get my child back. They're never going to have children. They're going to live with this forever. And then I have to live with knowing that I failed them because I didn't protect them from that. And the list goes on and on. It's like 3-4 pages of these curses that are promised to us. And the funny thing is that people go, again, short lifespan, which you could also call like short attention span because you're not studying the past, right? Who would read the Bible when you only have one life? So you have to go out there and fuck every day for the rest of your life. But you don't read about these things, and it's so clearly put in there, especially in Deuteronomy. It really drives it home, but it says it's not just going to be inflicted upon you. It's going to be on your children and your children's children and your children's children's children, for generations to come. These curses that I will put upon you if you should turn away from me or draw other people away from me. So when we today in modern times go, oh, why would they stick something in a child's arm that would kill them? And I go, well, were their parents completely free of sin? Because that could be something being passed down that line, and I'm not making any claims. I know we don't make claims here, but what I'm saying is it's coincidental, even though coincidences don't exist, that these rules and these guidelines and these promises were given, 4,000 years ago, 4,500 years ago. And here we are today seeing it. And time is an illusion and it's a cycle and it's all happening at once. And it's a living book. There's so much to learn from that, but we want to argue over fucking what Jesus's name was.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And it reminds me.
I'll make this the Over Brandon show. I'll cut you all off. Trust me. I'm running the Zoom. Click,
cut me off.
It's cut Jesus. Jesus is the only name.
It reminds me what you were saying about like sin. I don't know if you said it this way. I can't remember, but like sin coming from your own choices that you've made, and you bring these things upon yourself. And we've quoted it before, but I think it's Jude 13 or 14 because there's only one chapter. So I can't remember if it's 13th or 14th verse, but it's basically saying like sin comes from the evil desires of your own heart, basically. So it's like if you're sick, if you're experiencing trauma, pain, whatever, you might want to look at yourself and look at what you're avoiding and what your blind spots might be, because you might be bringing that upon yourself.
100%. And sin is like sin people, again, dogma, like sin, they'll say, like murder is a sin. But then I'm the type of person who goes, so somebody leaves a gun out on a kitchen table or a coffee table, and a 4-year-old who has never seen one, has no idea what it is, doesn't know how it works, picks it up, pulls the trigger.
Is that murder?
Kills their brother. Is that murder? Did they just do sin? I don't think so. I think that sin requires intention. It requires knowledge of what is good and evil. It requires knowledge that what you're doing is wrong. I think that is the prerequisite for sin. I don't think that just an action is
absolutely
sin. It requires knowing that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, and that's one where it gets tricky, because there are some things which do require knowledge for you to learn that it's wrong, but then there's also universal truth that we're all born with. Call it whatever you want. Some people might call it wisdom. Some might call it enlightenment. Some might call it intuition. Some might call it the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. Some might call it discernment. Whatever it is, we all like inherently know that there are wrong things.
Absolutely. Even the Bible says, I think it was Romans chapter 2, when Brandon and I last looked for this quote. I think it's in Romans chapter 2, where I think it was whoever wrote Romans. Some people say Paul wrote it. Or was it Paul who wrote Romans? I can't even remember. Anyway, whatever. It basically says that it's inside of you to know right and wrong. Like, it's inside of you to know. So it's like, it literally is intention. It's your own intention. And when you're doing something shisty,
Yeah. And
Yep.
I'd have to, I love what you just said, Nick, about no action, like killing and murdering. But I do believe there is one action we can make a claim that would always be considered a sin, and that's not hitting the like button on this video.
For all you over Sharonites.
All you over Sharonite slaves, followers of us, hit that like button. What are you thinking? Anyway, this is some freaking gravy right now.
That was good. Yeah, it also, I forget where in the Bible it says, it's in the New Testament, but it says basically we'll be judged by the light within us. And I think that that's absolutely true, because that's age old question, especially, with non-Christians, is it's a gotcha question where they're like, oh, so you have a tribe that's never heard of Jesus.
Oh, that used to drive me insane.
And it's like, pick up your book, bro, and read it. It says you'll be judged by the light inside of you. There's universal truth. There's universal love. There's universal understanding that we know what is right and what is wrong. And it says we'll be judged that way. I think that if you read your Bible and if you accept God and you believe that Jesus died for our sins, it doesn't make you inherently better. I think it almost just ups the requirements of you walking this life. Like, if you're given that wisdom, now the stakes are higher because you know more, so you have to be better. And I think that's what leads, at least for me anyways, the whole faith versus works argument is retorted to me, because I go, if you have faith, that's what should motivate you to do the works. Like, it should level you up to be like, I have to do this. How do you follow Jesus and not want to emulate Jesus's life, teaching and compassion and empathy and understanding and guiding people, and going off and getting that one lost sheep? Like, how do you not in love? Yes. And forgiveness, the ultimate forgiveness, getting literally stabbed after being tortured brutally, and he's crying out for forgiveness. So the whole faith versus works thing is it's by man. It's straight up by man. It's a way to get out of doing what we should be doing and what we know that we should be doing. And that's a recurring theme, not just in Christianity, but in religion in general, is saying, okay, here's the scrolls. We got the scrolls. We found them, right? We dug them up. This is what it says. I don't really feel like doing that, though. I don't really feel like doing that. So then let me misinterpret it. Let me mistranslate it for 1,000 years until we can get it just right to the point where we can use it as a form of control, but also not have to actually adhere to it. And it's the whole thing is just silly to me because there's so much truth in it, and your life gets better. Like your life genuinely gets better when you start to really internalize a lot of this wisdom that is not just in Christianity, but everywhere. But it's weird. People run from it. You know, people, they don't want to do that work. They don't want to do the heavy lifting. And it's like that heavy lifting is what makes you strong, bro. Like if you're trying to get out of lifting all the time, you're going to remain weak, you know. Pick up your Bible. There's actual wisdom in there that you can soak up, and it's free. And you don't need anybody to tell you how to read it because it comes into you. Like
Oh,
it
how
comes
dare
into
you?
you
Oh,
don't need anybody to read it, but you also aren't going to get that wisdom if you're only reading cartoon depictions of Noah's Ark in children's books. You have to read the actual stuff that was given to us in order to get that wisdom. And I'm not saying that that wisdom is not attainable through life. It definitely is. But my thing is like, if you're given an opportunity to read it, why would you waste your whole life trying to find one lesson when you could collect, 1,000 lessons from something?
Yeah, and what always blew my mind about truthers that are hardcore churchians is that you could go back. I mean, I've done it. There's a lot of work done where you could see that people, as we look at today as grabblers and all these families that are in control, like their line goes back to people like Constantine, who was Sol Invictus. Like he was a solar worshiper, sun worshiper, and he
Yep.
came and you could read about the battles and you could read about the crosses in the sky. Is that propaganda? And then they have the Council of Nicaea and like the Councils of Trent where they debated all this stuff. And if you look at what they were into, which is basically how to control large populations, it doesn't take much to put it together, and then you could also study history and see why these different brands of Christianity came about. You could see the monarchs like King James, who interpreted certain things and why he did it to fit his needs, not the needs of everybody else. So you can logically deduce these things and put them together. And that's why it blows my mind that people still have these dogmatic views when it's so clear that there's these dogmatic views. And the reason they put the truth in there is because when you put it together, even with a half truth, it still resonates, and that's that truth inside it is what's making it resonate and what's making it seem right to these people. But then they also accept the dogma with it. And that's where they don't realize that's like a poison, excuse me, a poison pill.
yeah. Fighting about, like you were saying, nitpicking about silly things like how do you say Jesus' name, or how do you spell Jesus' name, or how you even say, yeah, like I don't see how people don't realize that having debates about things like that are just worthless and pointless. I'm like, I mean, they're worthless and pointless to me because I see it, but I guess it's not worthless and pointless to them because they have to experience that, maybe to realize that it's worthless and pointless.
Yeah, could it be?
Dude, right? That's what I'm saying. I don't get mad. So I'm like, everything happens like it's supposed to.
Don't get mad, get glad.
Um,
Glad lock zipper bags. You guys remember that commercial?
Yeah, use promo code over Sharon to save 15% on Ziploc bags.
I have a couple stories I want to share with you guys. I don't know if you want to end it soon or if you guys can keep going, but just to kind of drill this home about how absolutely insane it is to argue over stupid shit. So when my first daughter was born, it was life-changing, right? And I've shared these stories in the past. You can find them like I did Hanging with Bears and stuff, and I've written them in letters, but I've had experiences like driving home from the hospital where I just said thank you. 2 words in my head, didn't even say it out loud. Overcome with like the spirit moving through me, rushing through my body so hard that I had to pull over. I couldn't drive. Like it, my whole entire nervous system was lit up. I was like bawling, crying. And but I had another one when my daughter was my oldest daughter, who's almost 4. She was probably a year and a half old, so she was starting to get some words, and but it was still kind of, you know, that baby gibberish. And I was going to put her to bed one night, and she's drinking milk. I'm rocking her in bed. It's a dark room, and I'm sitting there. I'm fully enthralled in my wood shop at this point. I'm working 16-hour days. I'm just depleted physically and emotionally, but I'm have to keep going because this is maybe beginning to mid 2021, so we're still well into the corona nonsense. And so I'm praying there quietly, going, you know, I feel like what I'm doing is right, but I also feel like I'm breaking myself in the process. Um, and I'm at a crossroads. I don't know what to do. Do I keep going with the shop and try to build it because I feel like I'm killing myself physically? My neck hurts worse every day. My back hurts worse every day. What do I do? If I'm on the right path for now, not long term, but just for now, if I should keep going doing this, just give me a sign. Cause like I need some reassurance, you know? And I go, like, when I pray, I really humble myself a lot of the times. And I just like, I have that knowing, that inner knowing of like, I'm not even worthy of asking for things. I feel like I have a lot of forgiving myself to do before I can even ask of anything. But there are rare times like that where I go, give me a sign, give me anything. And my daughter finishes her milk, and oh man, it's going to give me goosebumps again. It does every time. So she's sitting with her back face towards our bedroom door, and she finishes her milk. She gives me her bottle, and usually she would curl up into me and go to sleep without a word, right? Close her eyes, go to sleep. But she sits up upright, and then she looks like this. So like I'm back here, and she looks like this over towards the corner of the bedroom, and she goes, "Huh!" And she looks over there, and I'm like, not. I didn't realize at first because I'm still praying, and I'm kind of like tearing up a little bit. It was a really hard night for me, and she goes, "Dad, Dad," and I was like, "Yeah, baby, what is it?" And she goes, "On ghoul." And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because she had just learned how to say vacuum. So I'm like, is she saying vacuum? But she goes, on ghoul. And I was like, what do you mean, baby? And she goes, she's like, I saw her eyes move first back to the door. And then she turned her head and looked as if she were listening to somebody. And then she turns around and like she kind of nodded a little bit. And then she turns back and she goes, on ghoul. And I go, baby, I don't know what you're talking about. And she goes, on Joel. On Joel. And bro, like, oh shit.
Holy smokes,
Fuck,
dude.
every time I tell this story, I get a little bit choked up. Sorry.
Holy smokes.
But I realized what she had said, and I just started weeping, like floodgates open. And so I'm bawling hysterically. She's sitting upright. She's maybe like 15, 16 months old, right? She doesn't even have motor capacity, right? She's still a baby. She's flailing everywhere. And so I'm weeping. I take my glasses off. I'm wiping my eyes because I'm like, 20 seconds ago, I just prayed and asked for a sign. Just show me I'm on the right path. And so she does that. And I take my glasses off. This child, when I looked up, I don't know how to explain it, guys. It was like I was looking at my baby, and I was like seeing my baby, but I was like seeing somebody else in my baby's eyes. And I don't know how to describe this. But it was like I was looking at somebody's eyes who fully understood me, fully knew me, fully understood every thought that was going on in my head. Like it was all understanding all at once. And my child, who had never done this in the past and has never done it since, without any shaking in her hand, she lifts her hand up and brings it to my face, and she just touches my face. And when she touched my face, I felt something move through my whole body. I start weeping uncontrollably, and she held my face for like 10 seconds while I'm sitting there bawling like a child. And I was like, am I looking at like Jesus right now? Like, is this coming through my child? Because children are way more in tune with the spiritual realm than we are. Like, to me, that's not even a question. And it was like her eyes were different. They were old. They were old, like
Wisdom.
old eyes, like all knowing everything. And she touches my face, and she just held my hand there, and I wept. And then she takes her hand down, and then she goes, like, kind of like blinked a couple times, and then was back to herself. And she laid down in my arm, and she was asleep. I'm not joking, in 30 seconds, fully asleep, snoring. And I put her down for bed, and I came downstairs, and my wife was upstairs doing something in the other room, and I texted her, and I just wept again. Like, I told her what happened, and I was just like full body, like feeling the spirit move, goosebumps, like that energy. You feel like your energy body's like swelling and is just going to burst through your physical body. But I'm like, I didn't fucking believe in the Trinity when that happened. I wasn't praying to Yeshua. I didn't consider myself an like Orthodox or Protestant or Catholic. None of that.
Right.
None of that is needed.
The council, and they talked about it, and they explained.
Dude,
Did you hear?
It's insane. It's insane. Like,
but don't you know?
Yeah. Do you deny? The whole thing to me is just so silly. So when you have experiences like that, where you go like, I'm a long-term fuck up, right? And I'm not like bashing myself. It's just the truth. And that's the nature of my life that I've gone through. I think I did the best that I could, putting walls up to try to not be hurt anymore. But then those walls inflict pain and hurt on other people. So like, I acknowledge the ways that I have really messed up in this life, but I didn't go to church when that happened. I still don't go to church. I sit home and I read my Bible while my children are napping, right? But I'm having all these, whatever you want to call them, experiences. Guys, I don't know how to describe it. It was my child, and it was her eyes, but it was also not her eyes. And in that moment, I felt like true fear, because I felt like I was looking at fucking the creator. Like, I don't know how to say that. And it hit me so hard that I was terrified. I texted my wife and said, you need to come downstairs. I can't do this right now. I need to talk to you. She came downstairs, and I told her, but it was like I was looking at the eyes of the creator, and I felt ultimate fear and also ultimate comfort, and like everything was going to be okay. And, I don't claim to know what the right religion is or anything. I think there's just truth, and we fight about it. And,
oh yeah.
When I was 17, I smoked salvia because, dude, ironically, I was like, what's that do? My buddy's like, oh, dude, it's cool. You get to talk to God and stuff. I was already a stoner back then. So I was like, oh, awesome. So they load up like this bowl of like 40X super potent salvia, big party bowl out of a 4-foot bong. I clear the whole thing. I blast off. Okay. I blast off into this kaleidoscope. I had 2 people sitting on either side of me. Kaleidoscope. All of a sudden, there's a million of them. They're all doing different things at once. I'm seeing like a million different timelines playing out at the exact same time. Naturally, I freak out. Then that all kind of blends into like all these shapes and colors that I've never seen on Earth. And then time ceased to exist. So I lived in eternity in this weird, like undulating place where I was kind of being like tormented by things that I knew were evil, and then I come back and I see the room, and I go to stand up, and my legs start melting into the floor, and I fall over and I hit the floor, and I melt into the void. And I spent an eternity in the void of complete darkness, no sound, no light, no senses, no anything. And like after an eternity, there's a pinprick of light, and it grows and it grows and it grows slowly. Again, over another eternity, time doesn't exist. I don't know how to explain this unless you've experienced it. But then it comes and it washes over me, and I snapped awake on the floor, like stone sober. Um, like the trip was done. And again,
Wow.
that's another one of those times where like you go, oh, so time is made up. Like time is not what we think it is. Like this makes sense, and it this reality that we're experiencing, a lot of people get angry at it because it is hard, but it's also is very protective, because if you can't even experience a little trip like that, you know, like adjusting the chemicals in your brain slightly without facing complete fear because you don't know what's going on, then you realize how beautiful it is to be here, and it changes your entire perspective on everything. And it makes you really realize how unprepared you are for the spiritual realm. Like you're here to learn and grow and get up to that level, and it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't see that, or they spend their whole life being angry that they have to experience this, because this is literally a gift to us to better prepare for when we are not here anymore. Because some of the shit that I've seen on shrooms or on salvia, or through my own daughter's eyes, or through really lucid prophetic dreams, you know,
Mm,
tells me that I'm like, oh, I got some work to do, buddy. Like I have some work to do before we exit this theater.
I love that. I love how you got to this place you said earlier about this peaceful feeling that everything was going to be okay. And it's it's awesome to have that feeling. Like you can be overwhelmed with all the things going on around you. Like we were talking about, Brandon and I were talking about on our latest division episode, the live stream that we did. But it's like you can just be the eye of the storm and let that storm rage all around you. You don't have to participate. You can be that eye, that calm,
You,
the peace.
you know, a good analogy for that too. Um, when there's a storm coming, you know what cows do? They run away from the storm. They get scared. They let fear take over, so they run away from the storm. Uh, Bison, buffalo do the opposite. They run into the storm.
To
And
find the eye, maybe.
it's really powerful to think about, because if you have cows out in the wild, they will run and run and run and run. They'll run for 100 miles trying to outrun this storm, and it never does any good. The storm always ends up overtaking them, and they have to experience it anyways. All they did was deplete themselves of all their energy, whereas the bison runs directly into the storm the moment that they see it coming, and they get through it much faster, and then they're safe on the other end. And I think that's kind of a powerful thing to take through this life is, you know, you can run out of fear, whatever it is, or you could just face it, run into it, and then come out the other end with way more energy, way more strength, way more power, way more wisdom.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Amazing analogy. That's amazing. And
I
what was
love
that
that.
stuff that you said you smoked? And
Salvia.
how do you spell that? No, I'm just
I'll also say caveat: I don't recommend it.
no, I know, I know,
That
no.
was one of the most terrifying things.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
perhaps it was because it was not marketed to me as what it actually is. But
Yeah.
now being older and having talked to so many people that have also said it, they said it's literally like one of the darkest times experiences they've ever had. It is not. It's not a fun one.
Yeah, we don't recommend that in the Oversharing show.
No, not
We
at
just
all.
recommend being funny. I'm leading by example.
Exactly.
Wow,
Exactly.
that's amazing. Well, as Sharon would usually say, as Crow says, we're getting to the way past top of the second hour. So I think this might be a good place to put a pin in it, unless you have anything you want to say. And then I'll also give you a chance to shout out anything you want to shout out, like a business or whatever. I know you're not as public with your business, but if somebody's this far in still listening, they might want to buy a bowl from me or something, you know, like a salad bowl. Everybody, he's not a
Always salad bowls.
go ahead.
Um, yeah, no, this was awesome. I'd love to come back and do it again. I have, another 10 hours already loaded up in the chamber that I can talk about. I really like talking to you guys. It's hard to talk to a lot of people sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I'm 1,000 years old, and it's hard to find people that understand where I'm coming from, because from so many different perspectives, not just spiritually, but also from the truther realm. We've seen a lot of people wake up over the last 5, 6 years, huge truther movements, everybody thinking that they know it all. And I go, I've been in it for almost 20. I've been doing it since I was like 16 or 17 years old. So I feel like a tired veteran at this point. And it's just nice to talk to people who also understand the more, like I was saying, the more macro of it, without fighting about the micro of it. So
Oh, yeah.
thanks to you guys for doing what you do. I love your show. Um, and then also, if anybody, like my shop right now with what I'm going through physically, for those who might not know me, or real quick, I have 10 herniated discs in my back and neck. My body is destroyed from a lifetime of just physical trauma. So my online shop has been closed for some time now while I restructure, reprice. That has to do with just supply chain issues and stuff. Things aren't available anymore. Prices have risen so dramatically that I really have to weigh whether or not products are even worth making anymore for the amount of work that I'm doing versus the profit that I'm getting. But in the meantime, I'm just doing custom orders. So if you're on the Beartaria Times app, I'm Woodshop Bear on there. If you're on Instagram, I'm at Woodshop Bear on there, or you can go to my business Instagram and send me a message, which is at Little Bear Woodshop. But as I said earlier, I'm taking a minimum 2 week social media break. So, I'm not even going on any of those. So if you want something, put in a request and I'll get back to you. I always write back.
Or
But
leave
for
a
the time
comment under
being,
this video, guys. Leave a
hey,
comment
there
under
you
this
go.
video. Be
There you
like,
go.
I want a bowl. I want a cutting board, motherfucker.
Honestly, like that's a great idea, because I still have all my email that I'm using and stuff while I'm doing this. So
There you go.
yeah, good on you for thinking about that. But
That's what I do. I think there was something else I was gonna say. I'll think of it later. No big deal. But I do want to give a shout out to the chat and everybody that supports us. Thank you guys so much. You guys are so amazing. Every Thursday we do these at 8:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a nice little chat. The last chat that we experienced was the live stream that we did, but by the time you guys see this, it'll be a week or two ago. But we had 22 people in there at one point, and it was really cool. It stayed right around like 19 to 22. And everyone in there was just funny, showing love, and really resonated what we had to say. Very supportive. And I want to quote Joe in there. He's Joker's Redemption. At the end, he said, "This is the only chat on the internet that makes me not want to kill myself."
Oh, God.
So we got that going for us, which is nice.
some
Yeah.
could say that is literally the ultimate compliment.
Yeah.
It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
I remember what I want to say. Another compliment. I heard you say experimental medical serum, and I love it because that's a phrase that I feel like I coined a while ago. I've been saying that, and to hear you say it without me saying it, I'm like, somebody else heard it. Yeah.
I tried to self-censor for the sake of your channel. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I love to use that term though. That's like my favorite. So yeah.
Yep.
It's catching on. All right. Sharon, anything else you have for the good people?
No, well, I'm just grateful to have had him on the show. I just love all the things he shared with us. And it's very, it's just nice to have deep conversations like this. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think we take it as a huge compliment that you could talk to us when you feel like you're 1,000 years old, because just wait till you get to my age, boy. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's great though to see that because I resonate with that totally. And to be able to just talk openly about everything and use all my humor, my silly jokes is nice. So thank you. Really appreciate it. And I think that's it. Shout out to the chat. That's what I should say right now. The chat as this is going. What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys for sticking around. And I'll say, what do we say to the good people, Sharon?
Now, once you start over Sharon,
Then you totally stop being a Karen.
that's right.
That's right. See you guys later. See you next week. Bye. All right.